All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the inaugural On the Record debate series. I am your host, Tony Taylor, the owner of Leaders Lead Media. Thank you for joining us. I really think one of the most important responsibilities that we have as citizens is choosing the people who will lead and serve our communities. These decisions deserve more than just campaign slogans, headlines, and 30-second sound bites. They deserve thoughtful conversations. And that's why this debate series exists. And tonight is going to be a little bit different than what you probably saw. This is, you can think of it as like a public job interview. And the voters, y'all, us, we're the hiring committee. Our goal is simple, is to help you better understand how each candidate thinks, how they lead, and how they would serve if entrusted with this office. We are not here to tell you who to vote for or how to vote. We're here to help you make the decision for yourself. Every candidate has received the same information. Every candidate, same invitation, and the same opportunity will be given for them to answer each question. My role is simple, and that is to facilitate a fair and respectable conversation. Each candidate will have approximately 2 minutes to answer each question, and I may ask follow-up questions when clarification benefits the voter. So if y'all are in the chat, what I want y'all to do is you could put, and we'll have the chat up somewhere in here. You could say, hey, please follow up on that. And we'll try to, if time permits, we'll try to get a follow-up. But you'll notice the on-the-screen timer visible to both candidates and our audience. You'll also see a QR code on your screen, if we can get that popped up. There we go, the QR code. All right, so we invite you to complete our optional voter registration ballot. This is not an official election ballot. I'll say that again. This is not an official election ballot. It is simply an opportunity to reflect on tonight's debate and share your thoughts based solely on what you hear this evening. When you complete this ballot, you'll have the opportunity to follow Leaders Lead the podcast and review tonight's replay, candidate interviews, future debates, and other important community conversations. Before we begin, I want to ask y'all one favor. It looks like we have 88, okay, it's rising, 88 people in here. If we could take a break and you could share this live stream, all right, I'm going to pause for 10 seconds, and I want you to just share the live stream so other people can see. Okay, we got 93 people. Okay, I see it rising. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and go. But again, our goal is to help as many voters as possible hear directly from the candidates before they return their ballots. Finally, I want to thank both of tonight's candidates for their willingness to serve and participate in this conversation. We appreciate your commitment to public service, and thank you for joining us. Let's meet tonight's candidates. Hey, welcome, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Good evening, Thomas.
Ooh, it's tense in here. I can feel it a little bit. This is going to be good, y'all. It's going to be really friendly for everybody that's watching. And again, gentlemen, I want to thank y'all for being here. Before we begin discussing the issues, I'd like the viewers to get an opportunity to know each of you as people and not just candidates. The office of public sheriff is more than just policies and procedures. It's about leadership, character, and of course, public service. So let's begin by learning a little bit about you. Let's go to my left, starting with, and we'll have 2 minutes to answer this. But again, please feel free. If you want to stop short of 2 minutes, that's totally fine. But let's begin with learning more about each of you. We're going to start with Sheriff Sanders.
Yeah, thanks for having me on tonight, Tony. My name is Derek Sanders. I'm the sheriff of Thurston County. I've been in this role for a little over 3.5 years now. I was elected to public office at 29 years old to become the youngest sheriff in state history. And at the time, the sheriff's office was probably in the worst state it had ever been in. We were losing deputies left and right. We had no money. Our facilities were falling apart. Our fleet was garbage. Our deputies and support staff were some of the lowest paid in their markets. And since then, we have really over-delivered on a number of those different things. And so I look forward to getting into more of that later. But the biggest thing for me looking forward into the future is really revamping our jail. Our jail is kind of the last thing. I didn't really address it much when I first ran for office because, quite frankly, I didn't know enough about the jail at the time. Since becoming the sheriff, I've had a lot more opportunities to get inside the jail, to get to know the staff, to understand the challenges and the problems occurring within it. And I started working with county commissioners to really find a solution forward because we do have a space issue inside of that jail. We do have corrections deputies who are taking care of people who are mentally ill and high violence in scenarios where they really shouldn't be doing some of that work. So I really look forward to revamping that into the future. And quite frankly, when you consider the state that I found the sheriff's office in when I took over, there's still much work to be done, especially internally. When we talk about, aligning policy and procedure and shoring a lot of our internal processes up and making the office more efficient and working on internal communication and all these different things that we really didn't have time to focus on when we were bleeding from all four limbs. Our job in the first term as a command staff was to stop the bleeding, and we've done that and so much more. So I look forward to getting into more details coming soon. And we aren't streaming on Facebook right now, so that's where I've directed everyone. So I hope we can get that resolved because I know a lot of people are blowing me up right now saying they can't watch.
All right. All right. If we could reset the timer and go for before you go, Kevin, if I can get the folks that have volunteered to share, please share and let folks know where we're at so they can know how to find the debate. Your turn, Kevin.
Thank you. I'm Kevin Burton-Crow. I'm currently a detective with the Thurston County Sheriff's Office. But a little bit about me as an introduction here is I spent 20 years in the United States Army. I joined when I was 17 years old and retired as a Sergeant First Class in 2021. While I was still on active duty, I not only was I raising my family, my two children who graduated from Yelm High School, but my wife and I built a life here in Thurston County. I decided to serve as a Washington State Certified Reserve Police Officer, as a reserve deputy, volunteering several thousand hours with the Thurston County Sheriff's Office as a patrol deputy before I retired in 2021, and then going full-time with the Sheriff's Office. Since then, I've been a part of a lot of the teams in the Sheriff's Office, kind of learning from the inside. I've served at multiple levels of our union, the union secretary under the previous administration, the union vice president and president under this administration. And I've been on the Marine Services Unit, recently a part of the dive rescue team. I was a field training officer, which I think is some of the backbones of the institution. I hold two graduate degrees, one in criminal justice and one in public administration that I got from the public administration degree I got from Evergreen here in Olympia. Again, another tie to the community that I've been so proud of. It's not just roots that I have in the community and raising my children here. I've never thought about once leaving this agency or this community. Not only if I disagree with something that's happening at the institution, I'm not looking for a job anywhere else. I'm not putting applications out anywhere else. I'm here to try to work with and for the folks that are running this organization to get what's best for the community. And I'm just proud of everything that everyone in the organization does. And I look forward to being able to discuss some of my leadership philosophies and kind of the vision that I have for the agency, should I have the opportunity and be entrusted with the authority to serve as the Sheriff of Thurston County.
Thank you. All right. For this next question, we would like to know, what inspired you to pursue a career in law enforcement, and why have you decided to run for sheriff?
Is that back to me, or are we bouncing back and forth?
Oh, sorry. We're going to go back to Sheriff Sanders.
So, early on in my childhood, I grew up in a pretty rough scenario early on. I first recall seeing police in my house at about the age of 5 or 6 years old, taking my stepfather away, who was extremely abusive, both to me, my sister, and my mother. And, you know, my mom ended up leaving him. And as a result, even at that age, 7, 8 years old, I knew that we were going to end up homeless. You know, it was a domestic violence scenario, a child abuse scenario. And, you know, I earned my stripes at about 8 years old. So to me, I truly believe the hardest part of my life has come and gone. That was me as a child, learning what it was like to grow up in a gray world where people who you think you love hurt you. And so having those experiences as a child and seeing the compassion that those law enforcement officers showed up. And then, you know, when we're living out of a van and living in shelters, being selected for the Shop with a Cop program where, you know, we didn't have any money for Christmas toys and things like that. And I still remember the officer's name who took me out on that trip, you know, using donated funds so that I could have something under the tree for Christmas and I could get my family some presents for Christmas. You know, beyond that, my mom was a dispatcher later on in her career. My father was a corrections deputy for a short time. And so law enforcement's always kind of been in my blood. And then, you know, at 19 years old, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life. I was always kind of interested in criminal justice. And I happened to get hired with the Lacey Police Department as a community service officer, which is the equivalent to our deputy cadet position. And about 2 weeks after getting into that role, I just knew for the rest of my life that this is what I'm going to do. In terms of why I ran for sheriff, well, the answer is pretty simple in 2022, because no one else would. No one else would stack up against a 3-term incumbent and call out the problems that we were having, the very systemic problems we were having. And so that is why I initially chose to run for sheriff when no one else would.
All right, thank you. Kevin, your turn.
All righty. Well, my journey in law enforcement also started at a young age. When I was a teenager, maybe a little bit before the time I turned 16, I got involved in peer court in the community where I was, which was an opportunity, a diversionary court system that allowed for us to work with our peers to get them out of the criminal justice system. I then was a highway patrol explorer with the California Highway Patrol and saw just the amazing things that law enforcement officers can do. Oftentimes, what I've kind of been referring to law enforcement lately as is kind of that last mile service provider in often cases, especially in the sheriff's office, where deputies are quite often the only one to get into that community where it's the hungry child, the forgotten veteran, you know, the abandoned elder, and they're in their living rooms, oftentimes, so the only one able to connect them to services. And that really hit home for me, even when I was a child. And then throughout my military service, I realized how important it was for institutions to have structure, stability, and for systems and processes to be in place, things that could be verified, externally audited, and really have some oversight. So the reason I decided to step up and run for sheriff, I was kind of inspired by Sheriff Sanders in that I think at one point he said, no one should run unopposed when we first were talking about his run back in the day. As well as kind of feeling in the office a tipping point. I kind of watched, it felt over time that we were outweighing the institution, and the office started feeling a little bit more that it was geared towards a specific individual instead of being something that was being built to outlast any leader, regardless of who was there. So that's why I decided to step up and offer the community a verifiable systems-based process and agency. So,
all right, thank you. Thank you both. Of course, you know, leadership is more than just making decisions. It's about character, accountability, and how you would respond if you're tested. These next questions, they're designed to help voters better understand how each of you thinks and also lead. So starting with you, Derek, can you tell us a time where you were wrong? How did you handle it? And what did you learn from the experience?
Yeah, I mean, the most obvious one, I made a hiring decision in 2024 that drew some outrage. And it was a very unique situation for me because it was probably the first time in my life where I made everyone angry. That was a unique experience for me. Usually you make a decision and half the people love it, half the people hate it. This was a decision where at the end of the day, everyone was just really upset. And for me, I felt bad because I felt like the person who I hired, I let down. I wasn't making decisions with enough forethought about how they would impact not just the people who were benefiting from them, but from the people who were experiencing them third party. And so one of the things that I did in that, it drew lots of scrutiny. It was in the news, is I held a town hall and I took my lashings. I let everyone and their mother come tell me exactly how they felt. And, you know, from that experience, one of the things that I really took from it was the public understood that we were chronically understaffed, and that we desperately needed to hire deputies. But kind of the takeaway I got from that was that the public was like, listen, we understand, just slow down a little bit, slow down and really think through some of these decisions. And so that's what we've done. The reality is that, you know, after passing the public safety sales tax, we're down to 7 patrol vacancies out of 115 total commissioned law enforcement officers at the sheriff's office. We could have had those filled 2 years ago. We could be done by now. But what we did was we listened to the public who provided that feedback, and we slowed down, and now we're picky. We're extremely picky about who makes it through the front doors of Thurston County Sheriff's Office, gets to pin on a badge, and make decisions with a lot of autonomy, a lot of really important decisions about making arrests and citing and release and decision making. So I would say the biggest lesson I learned was to listen to the public and just follow through with what they're specifically requesting you to do. And we've done that.
All right, your turn, Kevin.
Thank you. So, as I said, I spent 20 years in the military, so a lot of my leadership experience comes from that. I got promoted pretty early on in my career. I was 20 years old when I put on stripes for the first time and was kind of charged with the care and development of and not to sound cliche, but America's sons and daughters, right? People send their kids out to the service to defend the country and entrust leaders such as myself at that time to kind of to take care of them. I think back to a situation where I had first gotten promoted. I was in Korea, and it was the idea of balancing compassion with accountability, as well as how to break that that false relationship that exists in where people go, but you're my friend. You're my friend. You're supposed to do this way or that way. And it's folks that I'd grown up with in the military. We were, junior enlisted together, and I had discovered that they were partaking in substance use, and it was harmful. It was harmful to them. It was harmful to the organization and the mission readiness. But I didn't know how to kind of bridge that gap. And at the time, I kind of gave them the opportunity to do the right thing, where I think I may have leaned a little bit too far into the compassion side of things. They stopped doing things directly in front of me. They stopped doing the wrong thing in and around where we lived, but I didn't force them to get help. I didn't take that next step and go to the leadership of my organization or link them in with resources. And I've really taken that a long way inside myself as we go into law enforcement as well. And I look at the leadership, the law enforcement assisted diversion programs and drug court and stuff like that. And I've seen those things be wildly successful. And I look back consistently at the failures. That person ended up getting kicked out of the Army. And I kind of take responsibility for that. So.
Thank you. Can you tell us about a decision that you made during your career that was unpopular at the time, but you still believe that it was the right decision? And looking back, what did that experience teach you about leadership? Starting with Derek.
Yeah, we had a deputy who got disciplined for. So one of the things that I've started doing, and I firmly believe in this, is the public doesn't expect their law enforcement to be perfect. They don't. What they do expect is that we are held to a standard, and that standard is met each and every day. And it's a big ask. I mean, to go in and out every single day and uphold that standard. We had a deputy who effectively was having some issues at home and was coming into work late every day, but wasn't reflecting that on the timesheet. And I know that when we were having this conversation internally, and of course they were taking full responsibility for it, having some problems, whatever it may be. But one of the things that we did was decided not to fire that employee. Now, a lot of people came out hard, timesheet fraud, all these different types of things. But there comes a point in time where you have to understand that we're asking our first responders and public servants a lot. They have extremely challenging jobs, especially inside of a jail facility and things like that, or out on patrol, working graveyard shift. Like our facilities, our jail and our patrol division, they don't get holidays. They don't get weekends off. It's a 24/7, 365 operation. So we publish all of our major misconduct through press releases. So whether it was that one, we've had deputies who have been terminated due to conduct. And that was one where, kind of took a lot of heat of why aren't you terminating this individual? And that was because we truly felt like after the coaching and counseling, this wasn't an employee who was maliciously trying to defraud anything or anything like that. This is an employee who's struggling and needs some assistance. And I wanted to spread that message to our staff that there's always an opportunity to come to us and try to have us work with you to fit whatever mold needs to kind of adapt to your personal life, because we all have personal lives. We want our deputies to enjoy and have healthy, long lives and retire healthy. So we kind of stuck with that decision to not terminate that employee. And I'm really proud of the fact that we didn't, because they've completely turned it around.
Thank you. All right. Your turn, Kevin.
Well, also going to touch on employee discipline a little bit, whilst I have a different perspective on it based on coming from a leadership role within the union organization. Not the same situation, but more so the idea of defending deputies who have potentially had misconduct. And the idea that there's a perception about standing up for process and that you're standing up for bad behavior. And so oftentimes the outrage from within the organization, from within leadership, and from the public can be the initial feelings that come from any sort of misconduct or alleged misconduct. And so the idea that we all deserve a bit of process and that we're willing to take things as far as need be to ensure that people's rights are protected, even those wearing the uniform, is some of the situations where I've gotten more than my fair share of blowback on. Again, needing to properly communicate probably to my peers, my superiors, as well as the community, that the defensive process is not the defense of bad behavior. And so, yeah, that's something that a decision to stick by the requirements of the position that you're put in, similar to issuing discipline. It can be wildly unpopular to defend against discipline when the perception is that the person is not learning their lesson or not getting their due comeuppance per se. And so that's one where I think that I can learn from it, and as well as maybe learn to communicate better about what it means to do that kind of process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So for the next question with Sheriff Sanders, what's one belief or opinion you've changed during the last 5 years, and what caused you to change your mind?
So definitely the promotional process. So when I first took over, I made it real clear. I'm like, listen, we use a very impartial process for promotional testing. So people who are qualified to test, they test. It's for like sergeant, for instance, it's a very, you kind of go through like mock scenarios at different stations. You also have to take a written test. Those two scores are combined. They're given to us. We use outside, officials and agencies so that there's no internal preference over who ranks out on the list. It's important for the public to realize, almost like how presidents get to appoint, Supreme Court justices, sheriffs get to choose who gets promoted. And first line supervisors and, shift commanders have such a pull on the culture of a department. I cannot work 24/7, 365 around the clock in every aspect of the office. So we're really relying on those first line supervisors to really guide the culture and the transparency and the accountability of an office. And so when I first took over, I'm like, listen, we're just going to promote people in order. And my opinion quickly changed. The sheriffs across the state, it's an RCW, have a rule of 5. And so initially when I came in, I'm like, yeah, the fairest thing is just to promote the person who tests the best in the interview process. And then when you actually start pulling back the layers, you realize it's not so black and white. You really need to promote people who are going to uphold the mission and take care of their staff when you're not around, and uphold some standards when you're not around. And so that is one area that I've completely shifted. And you go into this role with lots of preconceived notions about things that you're going to do and whatnot, and that was one of them that just totally shifted for me. And I'm proud of that shift, because it was actually my own command staff that really helped me think through this process of like, listen, just arbitrarily going down a list and promoting isn't necessarily what's best for the community.
Kevin?
Oh, thank you. So an opinion that I long held was that when people made mistakes or didn't understand something, that maybe their intent was flawed. And so I had to take a deep look inside and see that people's actions weren't necessarily malicious. A disagreement is not insubordination. A conversation is not a failure to follow an order or something like that. And I had to learn that throughout my military career as well. And law enforcement, much like the military, has that chain of command and that hierarchy where, I thought at one point in my life that you followed orders, and that's exactly what it was. And it was more of a loyalty test. However, I think that as I got a little bit older, I'd like to believe I got a little bit wiser, got a little bit more education. I've come to find out that, the bedrock of institutional decision-making, that based in morality, ethics, legality, things like that, that it's okay to have a disagreement, and we can still move an agency forward or an institution forward and not be in lockstep. And so I think that it leads to conversation, and the strength of multiple different opinions can be put together to set the best foot forward. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. Every leader receives criticism. What's one criticism that you've heard about yourself that at least contains some truth, and how has it helped you grow as a leader? Derek.
One criticism I hear all the time is that it's all about me. This whole operation is just all about me. The only person I showcase is me. Only person I care about is me. And I think, it's helped me really look inside. Now there are aspects, as the sheriff, I'm kind of the cheerleader for the office. So yes, I am the face of the organization. And there is some truth to that piece of it, but kind of like what Kevin was just saying about intent and conversations and things like that. Everything I do is, has the people of Thurston County and the employees of Thurston County Sheriff's Office at the forefront of all of my decision-making. Anytime someone brings a program, this last week, we got multiple requests for new dog programs from deputies there and detectives. They're like, we want more canines. And the first thing I ask myself is, how does this serve the public? Not how it serves you, not how it's as the employee, not how it serves me as the sheriff, but how is this going to tangibly serve the public? And so that criticism, it does keep me grounded, and my wife likes to remind me I'm not that cool all the time. So, she tries to keep me in check and keep the ego in check. The reality is every sheriff I've ever met has an ego, and ego isn't necessarily a bad thing. There are individuals on this planet, CEOs, prominent leaders who have big egos, and yet they're successful and their organizations are successful. That's not really the question that I ask or that I think is important. What I do think is important is that if you have a big ego, and for the sake of argument, let's say that I have this massive ego, that's okay. But when you bring an idea to me, I want to hear more. I want to hear more about how that's going to serve Thurston County, how it's going to serve the sheriff's office, how it's going to make it a better workplace for our employees, how it's going to improve community relations. So I think the sentiment that I have a big ego is maybe true, but I also try to stay grounded in what Thurston County needs.
Thank you.
Well, I guess that's me, and I'm going to start off with saying I think the sheriff and I have quite a bit in common in that I have a wife that says that she's my tow holder. She likes to keep me grounded so I don't float away. So I can appreciate what yours does for you as well, sir. With that being said, I try not to look at criticism purely as what it traditionally is. I think of it more as a critique because I think that in each criticism, we can grow from it. One that I routinely hear is that I get bogged down in the details. I'm Mr. Bylaws, I'm Mr. RCW, or I'm this, and oftentimes my systemic or process based approach isn't nearly as exciting or sexy as some of the other things that are out there. And but I try to take that in, and I try to equate for those people that I'm talking with about how it can have a direct impact on them, and what the public safety outcome, what the internal agency outcome could be in a situation where we have to lay this out so that we can start thinking 10 years down the road. Again, as the sheriff mentioned, when ideas come up, when policies get changed and things like that, it's not necessarily the impact that it has on a specific individual or the benefit that that one person may have, but what is it down the chain of events? How do we start planning out, 5, 6, 10 years, or even 5, 6, 10 sheriffs from now? Things that we implement today are going to have a lasting impact on this community. And we need to be able to build a foundation, a bedrock to build upon and propel the agency and the community forward.
Thank you. Every leader inherits an organization with existing strengths and challenges. If elected sheriff, what would be your top 3 priorities during your first year in office, and why? Derek.
I guess kind of a strange question because I'm 3.5 years in. What I will say is that, the institution of policing moves slow. This is not a fast moving institution. The age old saying is there's 2 things, cops hate change and they hate things staying the same. And so you kind of end up in this world where you want to pull this institution in a direction that changes it fundamentally, so that the public is seeing a more modernized approach. And yet, like change, it's this big scary thing. So I would say, when we talk about my top 3 priorities moving forward into the next term, that part's easy. 1, the jail. The jail, everyone knows that the jail has been facing a threat of lawsuit for over a decade now, almost. It was built with a design flaw, not necessarily on purpose, but one that couldn't be projected into the future. Many people don't know that Thurston County used to be a misdemeanor type jail where about half of your defendants were in there for misdemeanor crimes. Our jail now sits at about 90% felony. The kind of crime has shifted drastically. At one point earlier this year, we had over 25 murder-related suspects inside Thurston County Jail, and not very many places to put them. So as we move forward in the future, the jail has to be identified as a solution has to be identified for the jail. And the one that I'm focusing on the most isn't necessarily building more jail space, but creating a mental health wing that can remove mentally ill offenders from our jail and into a more therapeutic setting. Additionally, I'm really looking for stability. So we've made a lot of changes over the last couple of years. I want to give staff some stability and some predictability that we haven't had. And additionally, the last thing I will say, I just think that you never stop engaging with the community. If you want to effectively police your people, you have to first know them. I have been on a 3-year journey of getting to know my community better every week, every weekend, every community event, every person at a time. And I don't think that's something we can ever stop.
Kevin.
Awesome. Well, thank you. So my first 3 priorities, or top 3 priorities, I don't disagree with the sheriff in the fact that the jail is a top priority. I would argue that it should have been a priority over the last 3.5 years, where spending on capital improvements and investments on wants kind of outweighed some of the needs that could have been creatively addressed with the county commissioners, just with a little bit of patience. With that being said, I think, like I said, back to the foundation of things, accreditation is a huge thing so that we can prove that we are doing what we say we're doing. Sheriff's offices don't have a lot of oversight. There's only what you hear is what you are able to verify what's happening, as opposed to what accreditation does for an organization, which is to bring in an external auditor and go through an agency's processes, procedures, go through and sit with deputies and ensure that that happens. And I would commit to doing that within the first year, within the first 2 years on the patrol side, and then ideally within the first term for the correction side, but noting that there is an infrastructure issue in the correctional facility that would potentially delay that into the future. I also believe that fiscal responsibility is a huge issue. We should be spending the money that's given or entrusted to the sheriff's office in a way that is tied directly to public safety. And whilst I appreciate some of the things that the sheriff's office is spending money on now, things such as personal branding, ideas of signs that light up in the middle of the night when the sheriff's office is closed, I think are ways that money's being spent that is kind of a misrepresentation of where our priorities should be. Additional training, I think, we've done a lot of advanced training and patrol tactics instructions, things like that, state mandated. I think we need to expand our initial entry training and lateral training for those deputies that come into our organization post-academy. We're currently at 9 weeks for entry level, and it should be much more than that. Thank you.
Time. Derek, would you like to follow up on what Kevin said?
I sure would.
And also, I want to extend this out to you. Like when we get done with a question, if you got something, a rebuttal, just let me know. All right.
Yeah. A couple things. One, police stations, hospitals, and fire departments have a tendency to need lit signage after hours because, yes, the lobby is closed, but the police department is not. We're a 24-hour service. So not having lights on our building at night doesn't really make sense. If you drive around the county, you'll usually find a sign of some sort. St. Peter's Hospital, bright big LED sign. Station 34 for Lacey Fire Department, bright sign. It's so that people understand that there are areas in the county that they can go to for help in an emergency. So we did spend money on a sign. It was competitively bid by the county, not by the sheriff's office, but by central services. And signs aren't cheap. They cost money. I also, a big conversation piece so far in this race has been accreditation. And I just want to touch on this because it's being sold for something that I think it is not. Accreditation is not a bad thing, but it is expensive. It's ongoing. It's in perpetuity. It's not a college degree, although it's kind of like a college degree for an office or an agency, but you have to keep getting it every 4 years, and it's not free. There is some grant money, but you have to supply the FTEs to do the work. And we already use Lexipol, which is a vetted system that sends out best policy or best practice for our policies and things like that. And when we talk about accreditation, the idea that that's going to build trust, I think, is where there's a strong disconnect. I don't trust people because they have college degrees. I trust them based on how they treat me on the side of the road at 2 a.m. when I get stopped by an officer. That interaction is how I build trust. And so it's not that accreditation is a bad thing, but neither is a Honda Civic. But don't sell me a Honda Civic and tell me it's going to tow my 30,000-pound boat. That's not what it's for. It's not an external trust building mechanism. It is an internal validation. It's for other agencies to compare back and forth and say, yes, we're accredited. And that's why so few agencies have pursued it.
Thank you. Kevin, do you have a follow-up?
Absolutely.
Then we'll move on to the next one.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to first start off by saying that that's a mischaracterization of accreditation. As can be seen by WASPIC, it's not necessarily an expensive undertaking if the agency is in fact doing what they say they're doing, meeting state standards, meeting industry best practices. And yes, there is extensive grant capabilities available to achieve accreditation through WASPIC. It can be cost prohibitive to go through CALIA or some of the other issues. And again, I would argue that it's not necessarily a thing for internal validation. It brings an external auditor out and that you can publish those results to the community so they know that you're doing what you say you're doing. It's not just a curated Facebook feed that is purely a narrative or a stream of consciousness. It's someone coming in and actively reviewing your policies and procedures, things in our organization that haven't been updated in some cases since 2019. So I do find it hard to believe that we say that in an agency or in sheriff's offices across the state where they haven't been pursued, our neighbors do it. Mason County's accredited, Grace Harbor County is accredited, Lacey Police Department, where the sheriff came from, is accredited. So I think it is very important to pursue those types of external validation that can be published, put out in front of the community, and they can see that we're meeting the standards that are required of our institutions. Not only that, but it's likely that it could reduce civil liability costs, civil lawsuits, anything, also ranging all the way up to, risk pool premiums, where we're meeting the minimum standard. And that's been validated by an external auditor. So thank you.
Go ahead.
Keep going, Tony, because I think this is a good conversation to.
I think it's keep it going. And
so I've met with the county risk expert, the county risk manager, and I said, I'm here to talk with you. Sell me on accreditation. Tell me every reason why I should assign an FTE to go through this process. And they said it would be something for you to accomplish and have this merit in your own mind. They were not able to give any specific figures on cost savings. I mean, of course, if you have a policy that's terrible, then yes, you open yourselves up for liability. But if there is a specific policy that's terrible, I expect all of our deputies to weigh in on that. I expect all of our staff to weigh in and make those proposals. And we've had those proposals made and say, hey, there's a conflicting procedure or a conflicting policy that we think we should change. There's even a memo system that we've developed to help facilitate that process all the way up the chain of command. But I guess my question for Kevin, have you ever showed up at a 911 call before, answering someone's emergency, or been on a traffic stop where someone says, are you guys accredited? The public doesn't even have the comprehension of the accreditation process for me to understand how it could possibly be a trust building tool. When we really see where trust is built is the interactions that employees have with the public. To me, the most effective way that we can continue to build trust, and when you see this across the country, is to invest heavily in de-escalation patrol tactics and have better outcomes in critical incidents. Those are the things where the public sees the footage. They see the police reports. They see the cases. They see deputies using time, distance, and cover to mitigate risk and make sure everyone gets to go home alive. Those are the things in my mind that actually build trust. And it's not just a sticker you put on the side of your car, because at the end of the day, there are accredited agencies in our country that are not great. They're not great, and the public doesn't trust them. So to me, for accreditation to be kind of the hill that the public, falls on either side, I just think it's just not what that is.
All right. You want to reply back to that, Kevin?
Absolutely. And I appreciate the perception of the sheriff. However, I do find it somewhat insulting to say that our community doesn't understand or can't comprehend what accreditation is. And I appreciate that a county risk individual may not think that it's critically important. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that it's a silver bullet, that it will cause or it will cure all ills in law enforcement. I'm saying that it's a foundation. It's a way for people to know that it's the same thing where studies have been done around the nation, and places that have been under consent decree have previously been forced to publish policy, publish procedure, be open and be transparent. We use that word over and over again, but unless I can verify that you're doing what you say you're doing, and again, I wouldn't just slap a sticker on the side of a car. I think that does a disservice to the process of accreditation as well as to the process of transparency. And you're right. In a situation on a traffic stop or when I'm responding to a domestic violence call, no one's ever asked if I'm accredited. However, they do expect me to understand the policies, procedures, the law, that I know where I can look things up, that I follow industry best practices, and that training has been documented, and the processes all exist. That's good. Right. I get it.
All right. So we could probably get into a little bit more of that later on. For the next question, what do you believe is the true role of a sheriff in today's community, and how would you define success if elected?
Me?
Yep.
So, in my opinion, the way that I've kind of rewritten this job description, because I didn't think that it fit in the 21st century anymore. I just don't believe the sheriff belongs sitting behind a desk Monday through Friday. I believe that that's highly attributed to retention issues. to the sense that, the sheriff lives in a glass palace and never comes down here to see what's going on. I believe that at the end of the day, I've thought about this a lot over the last 3.5 years. What is my job? What is my actual role? The sheriff sits in the middle of a very complex three-way diagram. You have the public, which are citizens, residents, business owners. You have elected officials, and then you have employees of the sheriff's office. And it is the sheriff's job to find a way to take those three circles that sometimes like to pull away from each other in different directions and unite them under one cause. That is our vision, which is unified public safety. It's grabbing that entire group, as many of them as you can, and getting everyone to start pulling in the right direction. And so that's how I view the sheriff actually engaging in this role. I don't believe it's the sheriff's job to micromanage their bureau chiefs and their undersheriff or any of their employees, quite frankly. The sheriff's job is not to be the smartest person in the room. It is to gather the smartest people, unify them under one banner, and get them pulling in one direction, and just make sure that we're inside the boundaries of what the sheriff promised the people they would run for. So whatever message that is, those are the guardrails that the sheriff has to set up and ensure that that no one's coloring outside the lines there. So to me, the sheriff is a visionary. It's not, sometimes there's some management, sometimes there's some leadership, but there's always engagement. There's always engagement between those three groups, and trying to make sure that everyone's being taken care of to the best of their abilities.
Thank you. Kevin?
Absolutely. So I think that there's a huge role for the sheriff in administration, but also once the administration of an organization is complete, absolutely get out there, have fun, be with your people, lead from the front. But historically, it's been seen, we talked about the military previously, we talked about major corporations, we talked about CEOs. They are the visionaries. They're not always out there on the factory line punching out widgets. They have to be able to ensure that the processes behind the scenes are taken care of so that they can employ that exponential capacity, so that those below them have the faith, the trust and the stability in the institution so that they can go out and do the work. One individual, as the sheriff said, can't be everywhere all of the time. And that's why organizations such as sheriff's offices aren't just about one person. And so if you can get together with a lot of folks, like he said, that can really pull together an organization, an agency, and make it the best that it is, then you can afford the deputies out on the road to go out there and do the work. I come from, the concepts of servant leadership. I think that it's important to ensure that we're serving those that are doing the work as well as the community. I'd like to see, and I'm a little disappointed that we haven't gotten one yet, but a community advisory group that brings in folks from nonprofits, businesses, affected communities, and just take that information in. And it goes back to that concept of criticism and incorporating those as critiques about interactions with each and every deputy, as well as interactions with the administration. So, thank you.
Go ahead.
I would just like to say that the bylaws have been drafted for a community advisory board. It currently sits with the Thurston County Prosecuting Attorney's Office for review. They're the ones who review all of our legal documents and make sure that we don't break any laws. There's laws around how you can set up community advisory boards. And I think Kevin and I are on the same page. Like, I'd love to have a community advisory board. That was at the absolute bottom of my mind when Kevin was being paid far lower than his market value as a deputy and as a detective with the sheriff's office. When, Kevin was going to be required to drive a trashy police car around when our fleet was garbage. When Kevin was working out of a dilapidated courthouse building. When Kevin was working with a contract that was just not very competitive. All of those things just took precedence. I had to decide at the beginning of my term, you only get 4 years in office. And if you get a challenger, you actually only get 3 years before someone starts, saying, hey, we should have done this, we should have done that. So this has been a very quick turnaround. I'll argue that there's no sheriff's office, no police agency in this state that's experienced more growth, more benefits than Thurston County Sheriff's Office for our staff. And I will compare our collective bargaining agreements for our three CBAs against any other office or agency in this state. If you take away the pay, which we have some constraints as a county, and counties have fundamental taxing structure issues compared to cities. If you take away just base pay, I think we have one of the most competitive CBAs in the entire state, if not the country. And that has been more important to me, quite frankly, than the community advisory board, because we can get to the community advisory board and we're working on it. But man, we had to stop the bleeding. There were so many things to fix. And we knew what we needed to do to fix. We didn't need advisement on that. We just knew there were so many structural deficits within the sheriff's office that's where my priority was basically staying during my first 3 years.
Thank you. Kevin, you got anything?
Sure. So I appreciate the support that you're speaking to the CBAs at this point, because I sat at that table and it was a hard fought war that we had as the negotiation team with the county and the administration to claw down those pay raises. So whilst I appreciate you saying that we have a great CBA, I do say that it's the negotiation team that from the labor side that really brought forth a lot of good ideas and a lot of changes. And I don't think it has to be a zero-sum game. I think the role of sheriff is absolutely multi-pronged. I think you have to be able to go to a negotiation table and communicate with the labor groups whilst also employing those visions that you have. I guess I have a different perspective. I don't recall driving around a dilapidated vehicle. Sheriff's offices have and continue to have fleet rotation services. It's happened historically in this agency as it's happening now. Dilapidated courthouse. Well, the courthouse is still in function, and the county is co-locating at a location that is new buildings that we could have absolutely moved into as well with a little bit of patience. And I think that giving credit where credit is due regarding the CBAs in that it was a hard fought battle and that it was a different tone in the room. I'll just say that. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Do you want to follow up, Derek, or you want me to go to the next one?
No, you can go on.
All right. Recruiting, retaining, and supporting qualified deputies continue to be a challenge for agencies across the country. What specific steps would you take to recruit and retain high-quality employees while maintaining morale within the sheriff's office? Derek.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Did I screw that up?
No, I've seen in the chat there that folks are frustrated with him going first all the time. It feels like he's not having a balance to counteract what I'm saying. So I was just making the opportunity and offer. If he didn't want to go first, I would.
Hey, this is a group. This is a group project. All right, go ahead. Go ahead, Kevin.
I think there's got to be really some creative solutions. What was thrown at the wall over the last 3 years was some cash-only bonuses, things like that, which have been proven across our profession and not necessarily keep in the long term. It also devalues some of the retention that's associated with cash bonuses or bringing people in at top step. I think there's got to be some creative solutions that are developed with the county commissioners and maybe with some of our local banking industries, things like that. Something that gets along with maybe very low interest, maybe 1%, home down payment programs where a deputy, can get an extremely low loan to make a down payment on a home, that it really gets them rooted into the community and keeps them within the county. That's just one solution, one concept that could be explored and is a little bit more root building than just throwing cash at a situation. The second thing that I think we need to do is meet people where they are. We should be signed up for the 30 by 30 pledge that's working within law enforcement now, that is a push to get 30% of the profession female by 2030 to ensure that we have diversity. And that's one way of doing it. They use and recommend plenty of studies that show how to use recruiting techniques and meet people where they are. We need to be going out to these community colleges. We need to further enhance our Explore post, which is an amazing thing. And I think that by getting out there and meeting people where they are, from the military, from the educational institutions that we have within our community, as well as showing people that they can see themselves in this field. It's not the historical male-dominated profession that's out there. And so really communicating that and getting more and more folks in and getting them in for the long term, I think is critically important.
Lessons learned over the last few years. I do think the signing bonus was massively successful. We hired about a little, from like 20 to 25 lateral deputy sheriffs with it. The lateral signing bonus wasn't throwing things and sticking it and seeing if it stuck to the wall. The lateral signing bonus was a math problem. We carefully crafted out the difference in cost between an entry-level deputy and a lateral deputy over the course of their first 12 months at our office. That entry-level deputies got to go to the academy. They're not counting towards staffing. So we saw that there were massive overtime costs while we covered their gap, and we're still paying them a salary. And the math actually checked out that a lateral deputy in a 12-month start saves you about $63,000 per FTE over an entry-level deputy. So when we offered those lateral deputies a $25,000 signing bonus, we netted $38,000 in savings through overtime and other associated costs. So that was a very calculated decision that we made. It wasn't just to throw money out there. That being said, throwing money at laterals doesn't really matter, but we have retained almost all of them. It was one of those things I knew where if we could get people to give us a chance here at the sheriff's office, we'd prove that this is an excellent place to work. It's a great culture that's continuing to shift in the right direction. And that's held fast for us. For us, it's interesting. Support staff is an interesting place, right? We just had about 250 applicants for support staff for one vacant position. It tells me that people are wanting to come work here. They're interested in the job. Moving forward into the future, though, what I'm here to tell you is that money, Tony, more money, more problems. It's not going to solve all of our issues. What I think is far more an interesting concept when it comes to retention is allowing employees to find their niche within the office, which is why we've added so many new specialty opportunities and career advancement opportunities within all of our bureaus, and then letting them make ideas and shift things around and put their fingerprints on the championship trophy.
All right. Thank you. Trust between law enforcement and community takes years to build and only moments to lose. What specific actions would you take to strengthen the public's trust while also supporting the deputies serving under your command? Kevin.
Thank you. So I think the sheriff's offices are uniquely face a unique challenge. So in the implementation of community policing models, the cities have a little bit of an easier task on that because they can get their law enforcement officers out of their cars into the communities, using things like walking patrol, going to community events, things like that. A lot more rural in the unincorporated areas. And I think that a way to overcome that issue and really implement community policing is to implement like a district deputy, which we have district deputies, but resident deputy programs where right now the sheriff gets out into the community quite a bit. And I applaud him for that. I give credit where credit is due. But I'd like to see even more where, you take a deputy with you. This is the person that comes to your house. This is the person that's going to answer your 911 call. Put on programs out in senior centers, talking with the retirees and senior citizens on how to avoid scams and how to spot elder abuse, and bringing those deputies out into that community to stop in at businesses. And you have to do it in a deliberate and intentional way. It has to be a conversation that's had so that it's not just the face of the agency being out there, but it's each and every one of our deputies that are out in the community doing those things. We have a pretty robust program right now of deputies being reassigned to the same district, and they can do that. But we have to figure out a way to afford them the opportunity to build those relationships and give them the training to get out and be the sheriff's liaison out there when the sheriff can't be there.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that, and certainly there's room for me to improve. I love the idea of taking a deputy with me to community events, and we've been kind of trying to flirt with that. But staffing is always staffing. Even with the additional bodies that we have been able to acquire, you always kind of feel like you're running up against the razor edge a little bit. And the reality too that I want to acknowledge is that I'm happy to work 70 hours a week and go to all these community events, and I recognize that not all of our deputies are. They already work overtime to complete their cases and all these types of things. And so I recognize that there are deputies, and it's totally okay, who want to go to work and go home. Like they're already serving in such a great capacity. So I totally want to be mindful of that. With that being said, one of the big things I think for me is this office right now has about 15 total vacancies to fill between all of our bureaus, at about 250 total FTEs roughly. And we've got about 700 applicants to fill those 15 spots. So it's been an interesting theory that I've tried to play with a little bit over the last couple of years is over the last 3.5 years, I've probably fired more people than any other police administrator in this entire region, whether it's sexual assault, sexual harassment, voyeurism, whatever the case may be. Like we don't cover our own. We don't do that. And to me, that is an area where I think the public has been extremely receptive, because not only do we terminate those employees, but then we put out a press release and say, this is really embarrassing that this happened, but here's how we're addressing it. So as we move forward, it's interesting to me because in my mind, that almost gave me the perception that, well, maybe people won't want to come work here. But I actually think the opposite has proven true. Good deputies want to work alongside good deputies. Period. So holding ourselves to that standard, and I don't want to hammer people who are making honest mistakes of the mind, but when they're making malicious mistakes of the heart, we draw that line in the sand, we terminate them, and we support our deputies who are doing really good work.
Thank you. So the sheriff works with county commissioners, city governments, fire agencies, tribal governments, state agencies, and community organizations. Can you tell us a time where you successfully built partnerships across different organizations and how that experience would help serve you as a sheriff? Let's go with Derek first.
Yeah, so we have been pretty strong partners across the region. I don't think that's a coincidence that I've been endorsed by every mayor, 4 out of 5 of our county commissioners, the lieutenant governor, multiple lawmakers, the county coroner, the county treasurer. I mean, the list just goes on, dozens of city council members. The reason for that is because I built relationships with those individuals before I needed them. I didn't wait for a time of crisis to say, hey, we should grab coffee and kind of get a feel for each other. So these relationships have to be built in advance so that you trust each other, you understand each other, and you can call upon each other for assistance. Additionally, I think if you polled across the entire county and said, what kind of partnership and what kind of support does Thurston County Sheriff's Office provide to our municipal partners, our police departments, you would find a very high approval rating. Probably another reason I've been endorsed by Tumwater, Lacey, and Olympia police unions is because they know that when they need help, the Sheriff's Office is going to show up, and we're going to show up and help. And we're going to do things the right way, and we're going to help out. And so some specific scenarios, the auditor's office is a good example, and people are like, what does the sheriff and the auditor have in common here that they would need to partner on? Well, if you remember, it was maybe 1 or 2 election cycles ago, individuals, terrorists, quite frankly, were filling up ballot envelopes with fentanyl to attack auditor volunteers who were sorting through ballot counters. And so at the request of the auditor, we actually detailed out our narcotics canine in the jail to assist our fellow auditor office over in the ballot processing center so that they could actually run the narcotics dog through batches of ballots to ensure that the people who are counting the votes that our democracy counts on were safe. So that was an example of an area that was a non-traditional partnership. And I know the auditor's office has been extremely happy with that partnership.
Thank you. Kevin?
Well, I appreciate that the sheriff's made inroads and relationships with people. I think that this is more about the partnerships that the office can build with other organizations and other institutions. I think that there's siloing ourselves away from other county government departments and not building robust response partnerships with, public health and county code and some of these other things, I think kind of leaves for the citizens, leaves them a little bit wanting in regards to some of our partnerships. Additionally, partnerships at the top are very valuable and very much appreciated. What would also be great would be if we could partner with our regional fire authorities and with our partner agencies to do training that's not necessarily large scale, and understanding that the things take on, extensive cost occasionally. You can do scaled down exercises, active shooter exercises, tabletop exercises, things that were lessons learned all the way back to, September 11th, where we all had a common operating picture was determined to be needed. And we're still learning how to speak the same language as our fire partners. There's no robust training, instituted within our organization to do that kind of thing right now. And I think that those things need to be developed. Again, I appreciate the relationships that are built at the top, but oftentimes it's not those at the top that are responding. And those relationships need to go down throughout the organization and have, true instituted training that when the emergency happens, when the natural disaster occurs, those that are responding, not just our specialty teams or our leadership, know what's going on.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I love that Kevin brought up public health, because we literally just met with public health to start an abatement task force. And so with this abatement task force, it is a proposal that has to get approved by the county commissioners, but it will be going before them when we're back from summer break. And the entire premise is that we kind of pulled everyone together and just started asking the questions about this whole abatement process, where we have these drug compounds and these places where there's so many environmental problems and trash and crime and overdoses. Why does it take so long? Are we so boxed in by legislation that we can't maneuver, and it takes the better part of a decade to get one of these these residences or compounds shut down? If that's the case, then let's create a task force to lobby legislators and get those laws changed. Or can we get creative about how we're actually going to tackle some of these issues? Because, man, I can tell you the sheriff that can get out there and start shutting some of these houses down is going to be the sheriff who people just absolutely fall head over heels for, because there's nothing quite like living next to a place where they're burning garbage, where cars are stopping all in and out of the night. There's constantly a law enforcement presence. There's constantly assaults and screaming, people overdosing. We have to find a way to effectively shut these houses down. And we're starting to have those conversations. Again, you can make the argument, maybe I'm 3 years too late, but the last 3 years has gone by pretty quick. So we're still trying to catch up on some of these different things and start some of these conversations with the stakeholders. And this isn't just a go criminalize and arrest everyone at these residences. It's also bringing in our scout mental health team. It's bringing in public health, the narcotics task force, and really getting everyone together to start talking about how we actually solve these issues, or go to the legislature and ask for a change.
Thank you. Do you have a follow-up, Kevin?
No, I mean, I agree. I do feel like we might be 3 years too late, as this is something that could have been instituted a long time ago in regards to those conversations being had at the top. And I also think that as someone who has worked with public health, code enforcement, our animal services partners, I think that there is something to be said for work that's being done by our deputies already in partnerships with those folks. And it would be amazing to have the administration formalize those processes. So I'm grateful that conversation was had, and look forward to it coming to fruition.
All right. So next question. State legislation like Senate Bill 5974 establishes uniform state qualifications for sheriffs and grants an appointed state commission the power to decertify elected law enforcement leaders. What are your thoughts on this legislation? Let's go with Kevin, and then we'll go with Derek.
Well, thank you. So I'll lead off with, I've been accused by my opponent as being the only sheriff's candidate, and that includes any sitting sheriff that feels like the bill was the right thing for the right time in the right place. I don't believe that any sort of legislation is foolproof. I think that there are some things that can be shored up, and I've already started talking with some of the folks in the legislature in how to potentially shore up some of the back end process. I do believe that there should be an appeals process that would end up in the Superior Court of the respective county to allow for there to be that third rail of safety outside of the legislature where the law was made, the executive branch where this commission is housed, and thus, ensuring that we're following through with how our government has the three individual branches. With that being said, I do fully support that an elected or appointed law enforcement leader should be held to the exact same standards as each and every other member of the profession. I don't believe that there should be an exception. I think that there's precedence for it within our state with our judges, that if they're disbarred, they lose their seat. And there's also precedence for it across the country. There's much more conservative states and such as Georgia, South Carolina, things like that, who have had laws like this on the books for some time. And it's been seen that they have not been weaponized. However, I do understand that the concern is that it would be weaponized by the state to remove an elected sheriff. And that's why I've been advocating for them to shore up the protections that I think should be in place for each and every law enforcement officer. The appeal process is in the system, it's built into the system in every other situation, whether it be civil or criminal. It should be in an administrative situation as well. I also am disappointed in the idea that people believe that this law implements appointed sheriffs. There is language in there that it would appoint a sheriff in the interim until an election took over again, but it is not turning our county into a charter county per se. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, my opinion on this bill has been well documented. There were parts of the bill that I absolutely not just supported, but tried to help craft with the Coalition for Police Accountability. Completely support the idea that a sheriff should be at least 25 years old, should have at least 5 years of continuous law enforcement experience, shouldn't be a convicted felon, shouldn't have convictions for, misdemeanors that involve crimes of moral turpitude. Totally good with all that. Was totally good with the sections of the bill that limited the use of volunteers. I think we've just moved past that specifically the part about using armed volunteers. Let me clarify. I think we've moved past that as a modern society. The idea of giving someone a gun and a badge and telling them to go commit law enforcement, those days are long over. With that being said, the bottom line, Tony, is that elected officials are voted in by the public and they're voted out by the public. There aren't any exceptions. Any exceptions to this is a shortcut in our democratic process, and it undermines the credibility of elections. We don't elect people because we just want to have a popularity contest and we got to vote for the person that we wanted to vote for. We elect people to specific terms by the people to affect a specific change. If someone can just be yanked from their position midterm over an unappointed board making a decision, then you aren't really practicing democracy. At that point, you've interjected opportunities for, quite frankly, corruption to occur. And listen, I understand why lawmakers wanted some of these bills. They were targeting certain officials and some other issues. But at the end of the day, I'm always going to side on the side of democracy. And you know what? There's elected officials that I didn't vote for who got elected to office. And the answer is to run a better candidate against them and beat them in November. Taking shortcuts is not how this country is supposed to operate. And I would further add that it undermines our democratic vote and the power of voting.
Thank you. Any follow-up?
I have a brief reply. I think that as of today, it should be noted that each and every law enforcement officer, all the way up to those appointed and elected, face decertification on a daily basis. And if decertified, would in fact lose their job. The idea that there should be a separate set of standards for an appointed or an elected leader in this profession, I don't think there's room in this day and age for that type of thing. Should the process be weaponized? I think that is something that I addressed previously. We need to get some legislation on the books that protects from that potential weaponization. But to consider equality in certification standards as something that just removes the will of the voters, I just find it hard to believe that someone should be so concerned with the decertification process as it's currently laid out. it's got a board of law enforcement officers. There are elected sheriffs on the board, lawyers, etc. I understand that any process can be corrupted, but to look at it and say initially it is a corrupt process right now before we even look at the equality aspect of it between the elected, appointed, and employed leadership, I think is concerning.
Go ahead.
So one of the areas where a law enforcement officer can be decertified, specifically a sheriff under this premise, is political speech. That's actually why this law was found to be unconstitutional in Thurston County Superior Court. There is currently an injunction. So the conversation about whether or not this bill is constitutional, well, we've kind of already gotten a sneak peek based on Judge Schaller's ruling. And as we go forward through this, it was really interesting listening. I mean, it was one of the most inspirational decisions I've ever heard, and I was proud to be there in person. But we look at this process. And one of the most important aspects of elected officials is free speech. How else are we to determine as voters who to vote for? Well, through the decertification process, and the reason that, quite frankly, this bill was struck down, sheriffs would be the only candidate in the entire state of all elected office that could be decertified based on the individuals that they went and spoke to during a political event. Because at the end of the day, the decertification process states that there is a discretionary clause where if we are to associate with quote unquote extremists, that we can be decertified. Any law enforcement officer can be decertified for associating with extremists. The problem with that is that there was no timestamp date on that. So you could go back to high school. You could go back to a point in time where you didn't even know that that person was going to go on and become a white supremacist. And that creates a standard that no other elected official in this entire state is subject to. And that was the entire premise of why this bill, at least for now, has been struck down. And so, yeah, am I going to go out, hang out with white supremacists? Well, that'd be a little awkward given my heritage. But I do think there's a big problem with not allowing having sheriffs feel like they can't speak freely, because you're not going to get this then. This debate doesn't occur if sheriffs are muted and feel like they can't speak freely. We need our elected officials to be able to speak openly and freely, because that's also how we figure out who we're not going to vote for.
Thank you. Here's the next one, and we'll go with I can't remember, who did we go with last time first?
Oh goodness, I think
I'm up next.
Okay, all right. Collaborative effort, right? What are your thoughts when you have an elected official using his platform for hate speech? What kind of guardrails do you think should be in place in that situation?
Oh, the guardrail is really simple. Elected officials are elected to specific terms, and you know when that term's coming up, and then you find the best candidate possible to run them out of the building in the next election cycle. That's how you deal with elected officials who engage in hate speech. And as far as I know, that's not limited to sheriffs. That's any elected official who engages in that behavior. One thing I will say, and one thing I supported, but ironically didn't get much traction, I'd love to make the recall process easier across the board. Let's not stop at sheriff, though. I can think of a few elected officials across this state who could use an easier path to recall. And that's going to take some effort. There's a constitutional element to that would probably need to be amended. But let's go that path. Let's make it easier to recall any elected official who engages in misconduct. But to answer your question, Tony, the way that you always deal in a democratic society where citizens hand their sovereignty temporarily over to an elected official, the way that you take it back is through an election. That is what separates us in the fray. That is why America is the exception in the history of mankind. That is how you prevent dictatorships. That is how you prevent corruption. That is how you prevent, the subversion of our democratic process. We have to trust elections. That's why the auditor is so important. That's why we have the separation of our government into judicial, executive, and legislative. We need this separation of power. We need to follow the system and the process to a T. We don't get to take shortcuts. And when elected officials start engaging in hate speech, that should just light a fire in us even harder to replace them.
Thank you. Kevin?
Yes, sir. So I don't disagree with the sheriff that there are flaws in the bill and that the voters should have the choice to elect their official. I think that there's a distinct difference between all elected officials and the elected sheriff. The elected sheriff is a law enforcement officer, has the power to take your freedom, to house you in the county jail, and worst case scenario, use force lawfully that could end in the loss of life. So I think that there should be, just as there are on each and every deputy or law enforcement officer, additional standards placed upon the office, and that's okay. In the conversation that we've had thus far, I've expressed that I don't believe that the bill is, foolproof. I think that there are problems that could potentially come from that. Sheriffs should be protected in their political speech. I don't think hate speech per se is political speech, but that's my opinion. With that being said, the recall process is extremely difficult, and it is not necessarily always used to hold elected officials accountable. However, the decertification process, just like the disbarment process for our judges, can be a process that's used to hold elected and appointed law enforcement leaders accountable. Again, not saying the bill is perfect, but why are we not advocating for modifying the portions of the bill that we find that could potentially be corrupted or harmful, and then promote the good parts of it? I don't think it's a zero-sum game again.
Thank you. Derek?
So it's kind of funny. I throughout my time as sheriff, I've kind of heard this sentiment that like, oh, sheriffs are different. Sheriffs, you guys are so powerful. And I don't know. I tend to disagree. Within our box, sure, there is autonomy within this box, but that box is not as big as I think people think it is. And I think Kevin knows this too, right? Like, I can't just make Kevin come in and work without paying him. There's labor law and CBA and all these different pieces. I can't just arrest whoever I want. There's RCW and case law. That box is a lot smaller than I think a lot of people believe. And the question that I keep coming back to in my mind, where we kind of get to this sentiment where like the sheriff is the most powerful elected official. My question, I guess, that I would ponder is, who is truly more powerful, the queen on the chessboard or the hand that moves her? Because the legislative branch is the hand that moves the sheriff around. They tell us what we can wear, what we can drive, who we can arrest, at what point we can make an arrest. The judicial branch is then confirming that based on case law and interpreting those laws. And so I just look at this and I disagree that sheriffs are all powerful and that we can just do whatever we want. We are heavily regulated, and that's for good reason, mind you. And I think our founding fathers did a pretty good job when they set up the different requirements for law enforcement through the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. So as we go through this kind of exercise, as we talk about this, I just hope people are keeping that in mind. I don't feel as powerful as people tell me they think I am all the time. I truly believe that our legislative branch, which is really the heart of government, quite frankly, creating and drafting laws and amending laws, they are the most powerful branch in our government. The executive branch, where the sheriff lies, should be nonpartisan, and it should be enforcing the law with obviously employing some common sense and morality.
All right. You want to leave it there?
Yes, sir.
All right. Sounds good. Technology continues to change the way that law enforcement serves the community, where you see opportunities for innovation for the sheriff office and how you would evaluate whether those investments are successful. And particularly the flock cameras. That's specifically what I want to talk about. Let's go with Kevin.
Thank you. So flock cameras, I think it was a private corporation where folks got out in front of their skis. Flock cameras, the concept, automated license plate readers, have been around for decades. It's just that when you put it in the hands of a private corporation with very few protections in place, and the legislation not existing to prevent abuses, essentially no guardrails, where people were able to use the PDR laws, essentially weaponizing them to find out where potential victims would be, or overloading PDR systems, things like that. So Flock in and of itself, I think, rolled out way too early, way before places within the state were really able to fully grasp what the repercussions could be, as well as how ownership by a private corporation can be pressured by the federal government to do things that may not be in line with our state law. With that being said, I think that there is room going forward for cameras of different types. Cities around the world have used them. Sydney, Australia, London, England, folks here, in Seattle, other big locations. I just don't think that our state or our communities were ready for Flock in the way that it was rolled out, with appropriate protections, as well as, auditable guardrails similar to those that we use for other criminal justice systems that prevent anyone from accessing it without a strong audit trail, as well as allowing for the municipal government or the county government to own those cameras and images to ensure that they can control the data and safeguard it.
Thank you. Eric?
Well, I'd first like to clarify that Thurston County Sheriff's Office doesn't have Flock. So this is all theoretical. When Flock first started really getting in, like Kevin said, ALPR is old. ALPR has been around for a long time. Flock was kind of the first one that I think really kind of played with AI and really kind of ramping up the power and capacity of ALPR. But when it first comes around, it's one of these tough areas where the public is like, well, stop pursuing cars. Okay, so then you go and get these Flock cameras and that's an invasion of privacy. So we're always trying to balance new technology with privacy in our country. Do I think that Flock will survive the constitutional test in the end? It's hard to say. Based on some recent Supreme Court rulings of the United States, maybe not. At the end of the day, for me, Flock is there's pros and cons, just like anything else. So we don't have Flock, but we have used other agencies' Flock systems to solve some major crimes. One of them being the absolutely brutal murder of a Tenino woman. I think it was last year. A Flock camera broke that case wide open. Similarly, we've used it to track down hit and run scenarios where a driver hit and killed someone or hit and killed a dog in a crosswalk and severely injured the dog's owner. Flock camera cracked that case. And so you can see, the public really needs to weigh in on the Flock thing, because at the end of the day, if you would like to see cold cases disappear and to never have a cold case again, well, then things like ALPR are the tools that you would need to employ. Otherwise, we're in Washington State, we have the fewest officers per capita in the entire country. We're ranked dead last. We have the fewest amount of coverage. There's nowhere else you can go to find less officers per capita anywhere else. So the Flock thing was so attractive here for a lot of offices, including ours at one point in time, because it was a force multiplier. There is a lot of pushback, and rightfully so. There's a lot of concerns about Fourth Amendment protection. So I think this is an ongoing debate that needs to continue, and we just don't have those cameras right now.
All right. Thank you. So thumbs up, thumbs down for where it is right now with the Flock cameras. Where are y'all at?
I'm not sure I understand the question, Tony.
Thumbs up or thumbs down as far as where it sits with the Flock cameras, where y'all stands on it?
Can you clarify Flock the brand or ALPR?
The cameras itself, yeah.
Oh, ALPR is a powerful technology. I would say thumbs up. Flock as a company, thumbs down.
Okay. What about you, Kevin?
Definitely. Flock can't be implemented into our communities right now. ALPRs are not connected to the internet most often. They're preloaded and can be used to solve crimes, stolen vehicles, things like that.
All right. So it sounds like thumbs down for right now.
For implementing Flock, correct.
Okay. All right. So look like we're in agreement on that. All right. So next question. Transparency and accountability are essential to maintaining public confidence. How would you ensure the public is informed during critical incidents while protecting the integrity of investigations and the people involved? We're going to go with Derek first.
I think we already do this. It's probably the thing that people say I'm most famous for. They say I'm chronically online, which I guess is a good description of that. But, at this point in time, we like to share a lot about what we do, and it's not always the good stuff. We share some embarrassing stuff too. And that part of that process is, it's hard to deny the footage. The footage is an easy way. And some people have said, well, the body cam footage in trial in court. And I don't think people realize we didn't get body cams for trial. So few of our cases in Thurston County go to trial. I think right now we're sitting at about 98% of the actual total cases go to a trial. And within that 2% of those cases that do go to trial, it's almost impossible to get body camera footage in that's unredacted. So body camera footage and dash camera footage was never about, trial or anything like that. It is a public transparency tool. Good, bad, ugly. That is the reality of those body cameras and dash cameras. My perception has always been that I don't own that footage, and the deputies don't own that footage, and unions don't own that footage. The public owns that footage. They own the instruments that they have purchased. Therefore, our PDR unit, I'll say, is I think we have one of the best PDR units in the entire state. We are cranking out PDRs left and right. And we provide that footage. It allows people to have the transparency. And I do think that through the process, of course, we want to be mindful of the different things that we're sharing and whatnot. But I think as an agency, we are. And moving forward, I don't have any intention to change.
Thank you. And I want to ask you a clarifying question. What is PDR?
Public disclosure request. So it's the process where someone is allowed to request any public document. And with few exceptions, those documents are required to be released.
Awesome. Thank you. All right.
Thank you. So again, maybe I misunderstood the question, but I think part of it is how do you communicate with the public in regards to public safety communications. And I think that social media is definitely a strong tool, but I also believe that you have to have traditional methods as well, which is the agency website has got to be updated. There has to be resources, at 3:00 in the morning for a domestic violence victim to go on there and find current information. Right now, that's not happening. We update our social media. The elected's social media page is updated numerous times a day. The sheriff's office owns that footage, and the public owns the sheriff's office. So it really should be put out under the Thurston County Sheriff's Office social media page in a formal and appropriate context. We should also add information to it so that people aren't having to just watch raw video without the understanding that the sheriff's office and law enforcement in general believes that things such as pursuits are very dangerous but necessary tools that law enforcement undertakes, as well as provide the community with information regarding the training, the extensive training that law enforcement officers have. Because I have a 19-year-old son who looks at that stuff without the context and goes, law enforcement is so much fun. It's let's get that done. Let's chase, let's do these things. And it's creating a culture that may not even be the intention. With that being said, I think that it's a collaborative approach of all versions of communication. And again, the website is a huge part. Traditionally people go to look for information at that website, which has information from 2019 about our patrol bureau. The domestic violence tab, where it says frequently asked questions, doesn't have any information on it. Talks about a study from 2008. And I think that those things, you have to spend time in taking care of the administrative functions as well as the social media outreach.
Thank you. All right. For our next question, many people leaving jail eventually return to our communities. What role, if any, should the sheriff's office play in helping individuals successfully re-enter society while also protecting public safety?
I'm sorry.
I'll go.
Okay, good.
So there's a couple different roles. So the jail is interesting, and this was an area that I learned a lot about when I actually took office, and it was actually very fascinating because I was always kind of under the impression, like, the whole Shawshank Redemption, here's your peanut butter jelly sandwich, kick rocks, get out of our facility. But actually, there's a lot more that goes into that. So first of all, our jail has some very strong policies regarding when they can release people, and whether or not we're coordinating rides for people so that we're not just dumping people outside of our building at 2 a.m. And additionally, inside of our jail, we contract with Olympic Health and Recovery Services. They're providing a lot of our mental health and therapeutic treatment within the jail. what I think is cool is that we're also using the same company for our mobile outreach team out in the field. So the exact same contractor is managing cases between the jail and in the field, which I think is beneficial when you talk about the continuity of services between the two. So the same people who might be getting contacted outside of the jail, maybe they get arrested, are now inside the jail with the same system in place. Now, I don't want to sit here and pretend like we're something we're not. We are a law enforcement agency. At the end of the day, our job is to build probable cause, arrest offenders, and try to preserve the safety of victims. That is our job. So I don't want to pretend like, we're responsible for every social net possible. With that being said, while they're inside the facility, every person should have the opportunity to take the classes they need, with some exceptions, obviously, to better themselves. And that's why, I am proud of the different services that we offer inside of our facility. I can go on and on about all the parenting, the DV, the AANA ministry services that we offer inside the facility to try to provide some sort of continuity for people. But you also have to understand that jail is not prison. This is not a long-term stay for a lot of people. Jail for many is rotating in and out. They get their court date, they have their preliminary hearing, and they're out. Prison is a long-term area where someone is there for 365 days or longer, which is a much different scenario.
Yeah, thank you. Kevin?
Thank you. So I think it's amazing that we have a crisis response unit out on the outside. I'd like to see it expand. I'd love to see around the clock, response capabilities and eventually achieve the gold standard of having an embedded DCR. With that being said, it would be a misrepresentation of my desires to see that we don't have, I think that exiting a carceral facility is a very tricky time for anyone. And that would be folks that, need medicated assisted treatment when they depart from a correctional facility, when they need transitional housing, things like that. And I believe that we owe it to these members of our community, even though they've made mistakes and have been temporarily removed based on their behaviors or their action at the time, that we need to bring our nonprofits together. As the sheriff said, there's not a lot of money out there to throw at these things anymore. And so bringing in the nonprofits, giving them a seat at the table, identifying how we can, proactively partner with them and use not just Olympic Health and Recovery Services, who does a great job, but getting out in front of some of these problems so people aren't just finding themselves released into the public without the necessary medication they need to prevent a potential overdose, or released without transitional housing, or one of those situations. I do agree that you're not going to be able to implement as many programs as you can in a long-term carceral setting. However, I do believe that it's important to communicate with the community. How many folks are we getting through the GED program? What other programs are folks graduating from? And to see some of that and the amazing work that our corrections folks are doing, to have some of that centered and the agency brag about that would be amazing.
Thank you. So for our next section, I would like to place you in a realistic leadership scenario. There isn't necessarily a right or a wrong answer. We're less interested in the decision you make than understanding how you think, how you lead, and what principles guide you under pressure. So this is the scenario. A deputy you've known and trusted for years is accused of serious misconduct. The allegations appear credible, but the investigation is just beginning. Your deputies are watching to see whether you'll support one of your own. The community is watching to see whether you'll hold people accountable. Walk us through your first 24 hours. And we're going to start with Kevin.
Thank you. As I've stated before, I'm huge on process and procedure, and these have to be in place before the incident occurs. There has to be a robust method and process to communicate with the public about the misconduct, as well as to shield the public from any potential future misconduct. So that deputy would be placed on administrative leave, investigations would get started, and depending on the type of misconduct, obviously you would have to determine what is releasable to the public and what's not for the sanctity of that investigation. I think that there can be a very delicate balance. I think that you run the risk of running afoul to Public Employees Relations Council and decisions that have been previously made in the event that you subvert process and fire someone for something that you know is wrong. Again, as I said, going through a process to appropriately terminate a law enforcement officer who's created misconduct or that bad apple per se is not necessarily supporting that behavior. Rather, it's ensuring that that behavior can be appropriately excised in a fashion that's not going to be overturned at a later time in that decision. And it's critically important to keep the public aware throughout that process. And I think educating them about the process is critically important as well. I don't think it's as simple as saying someone did something bad, we fire them, because that's not the way it works. And I think that that's a miscommunication and misunderstanding with the public. It's someone did misconduct, we're going to do the investigation and the process. And if that is a founded misconduct incident, then we will ensure that they are terminated and that termination sticks. It doesn't result in a multi-million-dollar lawsuit or for a wrongful termination situation against the county or against the agency.
Thank you. Derek?
Yeah. Well, I would say, first of all, I'm real big on trying to avoid major conflict of interest. Now, I will be the first person to say publicly, I have hired friends. I have hired friends, and I believe I am capable of looking at their conduct and grading that conduct in a neutral manner. The reason that I've hired friends isn't because they're my friends. It's that they also happen to be people who I trust indefinitely to do the right thing. And I don't think they'd ever put me in this scenario. But if they did, the first thing that I'd have to do is take that investigation and move it to a different agency. I would not want any indication that, I'm covering for a friend or that I'm somehow manipulating this internal affairs investigation. So of course, the conduct you're describing, it sounds like you're kind of describing like a crime has been committed. So in a scenario like that, we would put the individual on administrative leave. I would have a different agency that I don't have ties to run this investigation, whether that's like a Kent Police Department, something, a county or two away, to really make that clean break. At that point in time, we would take those findings, and then I'd have to make a decision based on the findings. I can tell you right now, and my employees know this, if you're at the sheriff's office and you commit a crime, and we're talking about a legitimate crime, not, you were speeding a little too fast on your way home from work. If you commit a crime, there's a really high likelihood that you'll be terminated. So I actually do think it's as simple as you did bad stuff and got fired, because that's the expectation of the public. The public expects that we are held to a standard and that we uphold that standard. It's similar to, we can't go around and have this big emphasis on DUIs in traffic safety and then employ people who get DUIs, but get to keep their jobs because they're already hired. I'm a really big advocate that we should not keep people in our profession that we would never hire. We shouldn't keep those individuals. If they couldn't apply as an entry-level candidate based on the conduct that they've committed, then we shouldn't retain them either.
Thank you.
I'd like to say something real quick, just because, again, so misconduct is different than committing a crime. Misconduct is policy violations, disrespect, things like that. If you've committed a crime, obviously a criminal investigation would happen by a disinterested law enforcement agency. And the administration would have very little to do with that until the outcome of that investigation. However, that is part of the process, and that has to be admitted in this conversation. It's not as simple as you're fired. You need to go through those processes, because what's happened and what we see routinely, and administrations and labor organizations routinely get blamed for defending bad actors or defending bad actions, or even defending the commission of crimes because a process is not being followed. It's critically important that administrators understand how to appropriately excise, that cancerous behavior out of an organization appropriately, so that it can't be either rehired somewhere else, or that person can't have their job reverted back once those decisions are made. So I just wanted to clarify my answer on that in regards to the difference between a criminal act and misconduct. So thank you.
All right, thank you. For everybody that's watching, I see some comments coming in where you're asking, where's the link so that you can vote It should be in the comment section. And also, as soon as we're done, I'll flash the QR code for you so that you could see it. So, candidates, throughout tonight's debate, I've had the opportunity to ask questions that I believe and that I've gathered that are important to the voters of Thurston County. Now it's your turn. Each of you will have the opportunity to ask your opponent one question that you believe that the voters deserve to hear answered. The purpose of this segment is not so that y'all can debate one another. It's to give each other the opportunity to ask a thoughtful question that helps voters better understand your opponent's leadership, priorities, vision, and of the sheriff department. So we will start with Derek. You go first.
I think my question would be, how do you plan? Truly, the most important job I have as sheriff is relationship building. It is to build relationships with people around me, to ultimately have those established relationships for when we need to call on each other for assistance. So, given just the mass amount of support there's been for the sheriff's office amongst elected officials, and different agencies and all the different things we've been able to collaborate on. And certainly you bring up points that we haven't achieved everything that we've wanted to do. It's a short term at the end of the day. It goes by quick. It goes by a lot quicker than I ever thought it would. But I guess my question for you is, how do you intend to improve the relationships beyond what they already are? Because across the board, it just feels like we're in such a good place as an office. And we've done so many things and we've accomplished so much together. I'm just curious where we improve in terms of relationship building amongst other elected officials, other jurisdictions that have expressed that they're just so happy with the sheriff's office and the direction that we've all gone. So I'm just curious how you intend to, I guess, do better in that scenario.
Okay. Well, thank you for that question. I think it's a critical one. I would intend and do my best to do better to continue to build on those relationships. Again, that the office has built. I think it's critically important for us to go and meet them where they are, to build these co-response relationships where we take a couple district deputies and a couple firefighters and paramedics and go through an active shooter scenario, or tabletop with some mid-level folks like lieutenants throughout our agency and fire lieutenants in the Olympia Fire Department to see how we can co-respond and talk the same language. I think that meeting people again where they are in their cities. I hear routinely that some of the cities were frustrated when we continued to pursue vehicles through their jurisdictions when they had distinctly different pursuit policies. I would go and talk to them and try to figure out how we could build policies that complement each other without sacrificing our positions on public safety. I would also take in, as I said before, that criticism concept, and instead of trying to defend against it consistently or using online platforms to potentially attack people's ideas, I would ask that they come to me and we have those formal critique sessions. Explain to me how we can do better, and I think that that's one critical way to continue to build upon the place that the office finds itself in. You're right. We do have a lot of great partnerships where we can respond to a car accident on Martin Way and collaborate and work together. I don't know that we have a lot of great opportunities where we've trained for a natural disaster, where we've responded to an active shooter and done those trainings and collaborated together. That's not one of our specialty teams per se. So I would say that I would just continue to reach out to those people and continue to build upon the sheriff's office's relationships that exist today.
Thank you. All right. It's your turn, Kevin, to ask Derek a question.
Well, thank you. And I'm going to start off with, I believe that the original instructions were to compliment you first. And I thought long and hard about this because I do respect you quite a bit. And I wanted to say that there is something I genuinely appreciate, which is that you were a catalyst that this agency needed, and that you did something and that's spark conversation. You spark conversation about the sheriff's office, and I think that conversation is what needs to be continued out in the community, and we need to have these conversations continuously. So thank you for doing that, being a catalyst in the agency and in the community. My question for you is kind of to try to understand your approach and balance to the administrative responsibilities of the sheriff's office. And you've presented over and over about how this administration represents the kind of change. I'm curious why there hasn't been, or what your plan is for a systemic review of policies and procedures that still date back to the SNAZA era, and why things like our forward-facing website has information that dates back to 2019 or is just missing altogether. It's interesting how that substance, that core thing that an agency, an institution of government is built upon, those policies, procedures, and that it hasn't kept pace with the visibility. So how are you going to address that going forward, and how do you meaningfully prove that that's going to happen?
So I think I understand the question. So you're right. There are policies that weren't touched from the previous administration. And I think when you come in as a new sheriff, and I would just pose the possibility that if you were to become elected, that, you know, based on the answers you gave tonight, you are not going to completely rewrite the book. You've said multiple times, there are foundations that we can rely upon and grow upon. And that doesn't necessarily mean, you know, burning the whole thing to the ground and starting over. So, you know, Lexipol was not created or wasn't implemented under my administration. It was implemented successfully under the SNAZA administration. And not all of those policies need to be updated all the time. You know, there are certainly policies that we are still looking at and still procedures that we're trying to deconflict, because we know that there are some that have been updated, but the old one wasn't removed, and it's created some concern there. Totally recognize that. With that being said, I also believe that our first line supervisors are doing a fantastic job of mitigating the difference and saying, hey, here's the current procedure. This is how we're doing things. And that's the kind of culture that I want, that peer, immediate supervisor kind of support amongst deputies and sergeants. With that being said, I think that this work never ends. Our work is so fluid. I mean, just last week, there's been multiple case law updates in terms of different rulings that have kind of shifted down. And those are all going to require feedback from Lexipol and new ways to implement policy and new ways to do things. So I think to simply say, hey, looking back in time, you know, there's some things that haven't been changed. Well, sure, but not all of it's broken. And not everything that I inherited from my predecessor was broken either. There were some things that were very strong. And I think the same will be true for the sheriff that comes after me. There are going to be some things where they want to improve and change policy and do different types of things. And there's going to be other areas where they say, hey, this is already good to go. We don't really need to brush up this area. So my commitment always is that if anyone in our office thinks there's a policy or procedure that's broken, we are always committed to moving forward and trying to fix that. And if there's a better way to do it, let's do it.
Thank you. So, gentlemen, thank you both. We covered a fair amount of ground. We talked about leadership, public safety, vision for the sheriff's office, and some of the more important issues that are facing Thurston County. I would like to conclude with one final opportunity for each of you to speak directly to the voters and imagine that this is the last time that they'll hear from you before returning their ballot. So if you could look directly in the camera, what would you want the people of Thurston County to remember about you before they make their decision? Let's go with Derek.
Yeah, it has been such an incredible journey serving as the sheriff of Thurston County over the last 3.5 years. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I think it's also important for people to understand where my mental mindset sits in this role. I'm not married to this job. I'm really not. It's specifically the sheriff. Most people could probably tell that if I went back to being a deputy tomorrow, I would have just as much fulfillment in this career. But I do think I'm effective in this role. I think I've been able to articulate the needs of the sheriff's office effectively, both within the legislature and with our county commissioners. And these things that we've made this progress on, they're not conjecture. They can be objectively proven through all the different things that we've implemented. The public safety sales tax is a legacy issue for the sheriff's office. It's the most stable funding source the sheriff's office will likely ever have. And, you know, I'm proud that we were the team that got that passed. And it wasn't just me, and it wasn't just the sheriff's office. It was other elected officials. It was community members, businesses. And so when I look at this legacy that we've started to build, I would strongly disagree that it's about me and just about me. Certainly I'm part of this team, and I'm trying to be the catalyst to get this change move forward and bring our office into the 21st century. But the reality is that we are creating an institution here at Thurston County Sheriff's Office that is going to far exceed my time in office. The next sheriff who takes over will take this office over in a condition better than I found it. That is a fact. I could leave today, right now, 3.5 years into my term, and that would be true. So I truly believe that I'll be effective in my next term, especially when we talk about some of the things that do need to be fine-tuned internally. But man, the things that we've accomplished over the last few years together, I don't know if we'll ever see something like it again in terms of a complete team effort to revamp an office in such a short amount of time. So I look forward to earning your vote and continuing this hard work in our county.
Thank you. Kevin?
Yes, I would say I just relish the opportunity to earn the trust of the community, to build an institution that isn't reliant upon a single individual's words, but is built upon something that can be verified by forward-facing documents that are published routinely, budget documents, annual reports, and other things such as citizen academies, bringing the community in, as well as building community policing models that fit our unique communities and the way that our county is laid out in the unincorporated areas as well. It's critically important that we have additional training for our entry-level folks post-academy. We're operating under a situation where we use a field training model that was developed in the 70s that is less than some of our near-peer neighbors. And I think all of these things need to be addressed. And the more information that can be put out in a verifiable fashion that isn't hidden behind PDRs, and that's direct budget decisions, direct policy decisions, as well as training opportunities, and really just recentering the sheriff's office as the star of the show, I think is absolutely critical. So again, I'm not asking for your blind faith. I'm not asking for your blind trust, but actually trust that you can verify. And I would commit to ensuring that those things are put into place. I think that we can continue to build a sheriff's office that is renowned around the state and around the country by adding some stability and some absolute process to the public safety sector that's in our county. So I really appreciate the opportunity. I really appreciate each and every person that signed on here today. Get out there and vote. And I look forward to the next 4 years, regardless of whether I'm the sheriff-elect or a deputy, because I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying here to support Thurston County. So thank you.
All right, gentlemen, thank you both for joining us this evening and your willingness to serve the people of Thurston County. I do know that running for public office, well, I don't know personally, but I know that it's a significant commitment, and we appreciate your time, your preparation, and your dedication to the community. I'd also like to thank our amazing production team, our volunteers, and everyone who joined us live or who will be watching the replay. Look like a lot of people are going to be watching the replay because it didn't go on Facebook, but we had a pretty good freaking crowd here. So I'm really excited about that. If you hadn't already, I invite you to complete our optional voter reflection ballot by scanning the QR code or using the link in the comments. And I want to remind you, this is not an official election ballot. So I don't want you going and saying that Tony tricked you. It's simply an opportunity to reflect on tonight's debate and share your thoughts. If you enjoyed tonight's conversation, I invite you to follow us on leadersleadthepodcast.com for future debates, candidate interviews. I got some really good interviews coming up next week with both Sheriff Sanders and Deputy Kevin Burton-Crow. They're going to be really good. I listened to them. So good. So leadersleadthepodcast.com, and please stay with us. We'll be right back. I have Vonnie Turner, and he and we're going to talk about tonight's debate, and we're going to let the two sheriffs go because we have the Sheriff Sanders. He's got an appointment. Otherwise, we would invite them to stay, but it would not be fair if we had Kevin here. So we're going to kick both of them out. Thank y'all very much. I really appreciate y'all for being willing to do this. And it looks like our community appreciates you too as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Tony. And I want to thank you, Sheriff Sanders, for the opportunity to talk to the public with you and for the conversation tonight.
Yeah, likewise. And I think I missed the section of the instruction. I don't know if I heard it to compliment Kevin. So I wanted to add in that Kevin is one of the smartest people that I know. And especially, you know, we're very different. I think Kevin's a little more black and white and I'm a little more gray. But as the sheriff and the union president, that's actually sometimes very helpful. You know, Kevin is going to remind us of those structures and the process and those types of things. That is his strength, bar none. And I just want to say that I do appreciate that from you, because there are a number of times where I'm like, yeah, he's right. We did mess that up. We do have to go back and fix this process so that it's fair and just and those types of things. So that level of intelligence and thoughtfulness and structure, I think, is by far your strongest trait.
Awesome. You want to follow up with that, Kevin?
I appreciate it. And again, I wasn't fishing for compliments when I gave mine. I was just trying to be sincere and make sure that people out there in the public knew that both the sheriff and I are going to, be there together for public safety. So just a little bit of a different vision.
Awesome. I appreciate y'all. Thank y'all for doing this. All right. Bye-bye.
Have a good night.
All right. How do we do this? All right. What can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you, Tony.
All right, man. What do you want to introduce yourself so the folks can know who you are?
Yeah, absolutely. So for those that don't know, I know we have a lot of neighbors and community members from Thurston County. I'm Vonnie Turner. I serve on several different community boards in the county, particularly in Tumwater. I serve on the Equity Commission. I serve as a community rep for the Thurston Regional Planning Commission, the Council, Transportation Policy Board. So I'm in a lot of different areas. Some people I know follow me a lot on Facebook for a lot of my political views, and I appreciate that. But one thing I want to say before we get into this conversation, I'm just a dude with an opinion. I tell Tony this. I'm just a dude with an opinion. But I do think having these conversations when it comes to the sheriff race and any other race that is important to Thurston County, having this dialogue is incredibly important. So I thank you for having me on here.
Dude, thanks for saying yes, dude. And it's your public commentary that I love the most, because I feel like you give it kind of unfiltered on both ways. And I didn't want to have so much of my own public opinion, because I do want to remain biased. I'm unbiased. Let me fix that. I do want to remain biased, but unbiased. I actually think that those two, having spent a little bit of time with them, I think that they're good people. And you can tell by kind of the affirmations that they had for each other afterwards, right? And I'm not even talking about, I know there's going to be some folks in the comments like, okay, he's a good person because, what about this or what about this? I'm saying from the standpoint of what I've observed and what I've like know from those two. I do feel like that they're good people, and they do want the best for Thurston County, and that there are some big differences in the two. And I'm curious from you, like, what stood out from you?
Yeah. So, I agree. I think there is a lot of polarization with this particular race, but if you listen to both candidates, they're not that far off that people would make it seem like, right? Like they have a lot of things that they do agree on. And again, there are some things that they do disagree with, but how I saw it was, let's get into it. Okay. Let's get into it. Okay. The first thing that I looked at when I'm watching this debate is the first thing people have to understand is that regardless of which sheriff it is, this is political, right? The sheriff race is an elected position. It is political. So there are certain things that candidates do that send a message, right? So there is studies done that about when you debate with people, about only 7% of your actual words get through. can matter. Over 50% is nonverbal. Over 30% is emotion and tone, right? So this is one thing I picked up on early on was their particular backgrounds for this debate. It's very interesting. They did very different things. Kevin was meticulous, I can tell, with his background. He had a family portrait in the background. He had his campaign sign, who he's been endorsed by. The clothing he wore, he wore was very thought out, very working class. I'm of the people. That was very important. Sheriff Sanders had the sheriff tie with the badge, right? I'm sure he's doing his meet and greet, so he has that setting. But it was very interesting, the nonverbal cues that they gave. I'm curious if you picked up on that.
Yeah, I did. I could tell. I could tell, and I took some notes. There was one part. there was one part where I was like, and I can tell where Derek kind of got like this.
Yeah.
And it was almost like I had this cue to where I'm like, hey, he's going to have a rebuttal.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go ahead and open up that. And I cannot remember exactly what it was because I took too many freaking notes. But there was a couple points. But I did notice his body language. It shifted a little bit. It was almost like, let me roll my sleeves up. Is that what you were talking about?
Absolutely. I mean,
sorry, not a bad one, but it was almost okay. Let's go.
And this kind of goes to one thing that Sheriff Sanders said about his ego and how he has a little bit of an ego. And I think that kind of came through a little bit when Kevin was talking. You could see Sheriff Sanders kind of lean back and wanted to kind of go right and rebuttal his statement. And I think in future debates and when he is talking to people, that's got to be something that he has to control a little bit more, right? Like, I know he wants to get out and say, no, I think this, I think that, but I think he did generally really well. But there were a couple of times where you could tell he was ready to pounce at that answer. And in his actual answer of having ego, I do want to say I thought was really well, because that's one thing that I also agree with, is that for any politician, you have to have somewhat of some ego, because you have to think that your ideas are going to help your community more than others. And so I agree with that. But yeah, he was ready to pounce on that. You know, what do you think about the dynamics of this race, about having a sheriff who there's a lot of people who are in his corner and who are not in his corner, and then one of his deputies coming in and kind of challenging for the seat? What do you think about that?
I don't know. It's one of those things where it honestly, from interviewing him on the podcast and hearing his story, how, and I'm talking about Derek, and hearing his story on how he ended up getting into the race when he first run. His boss told him pretty much, if you think that you can do a better job, then you challenge me for my seat. So I thought about that, like, as I was listening to Kevin speak, like, okay, he feels like he can do a better job, so he's challenging him for it. And I think it's interesting. And there was a question that I was going to ask, but I had our folks, you saw the private chat. Wrap it the hell up, Tony. I can see it. Wrap it up. But I was going to ask, what would the transfer of power look like? And also, if there wasn't a transfer of power, what would they do collectively to bring the department together? Because I'm seeing this stuff. I'm seeing stuff, and I'm not just specifically talking about those two, but I'm seeing, people that work for the department. I'm seeing other people that support it. It's divided, right? So I'm just like, how do they do that? And I was gonna ask him, but do you think that that's possible?
I think they're both professionals, so I do think it's possible, right? But there will be, I think, initially some tension in the sheriff's department, man. That's going to be natural. Look at that, right? That's going to be natural. But like I said, I think they're both professionals. I think they'll be fine. I do think whoever wins needs to be the one to extend that olive branch and say, let's work together. And if I were advising them, I would say, whoever wins, you need to personally create a policy or a program that you two specifically work on together to show not only your department that there's no bad blood, but also the community that you serve, that you guys are going to work together and that we can move forward. Because again, at the end of the day, it's up to the voters of Thurston County to decide which sheriff they want, right? Who they want to lead them when it comes to the police department. And again, at the end of the day, it's politics, right? There's going to be a little bit of tension, but again, both professionals, I think they'll be fine.
Yeah, I thought they did pretty good. You can tell that there was some hot buttons, and I purposely did not want to create an environment to where the egos start taking over.
Yeah.
I really wanted people to see these people for who they were, and hopefully everybody will fill out the QR code, because I'm really curious, like, if from watching long form debates, does it change anybody's mind on who they're voting for? Was there something that surprised you? Speaking of that, was there something where you're like, oh, damn, I didn't realize that? Or
there were a couple of things. The first thing was they actually have similar backgrounds in how they got into law enforcement and their growing up, their particular vision of law enforcement. So I thought that was interesting. Usually you hear, oh, people have completely different ways of getting to the same destination. That was one. I do think that the sheriff's bill was a particular issue that really captivated not only the candidates and kind of caught them off guard, but the audience as well. And I was reading some of those comments. There is a huge difference in how they see that bill, right? And
because I know you got some insight on it too.
Yeah, that bill, I'm going to try and give it to you straight. The bill is good intentioned, right? But there's an aspect of it that does allow an appointed commission to decertify sheriffs, and that automatically creates a vacancy. That is just how it's written. Now, it may have been intended a different way. It may be implemented in maybe a very different way. But from the way it's written, that is a thing, that is a process of it. And so this is a hot button issue that it actually has divided a lot of law enforcement in the state. And again, you can see it on the candidates. I think Sanders is very adamant against this bill. And although Kevin, I think, also has some issues with it, his is less so. But I do think, and this is where we get into the politics of it, right? One of the qualifications is age and being certified. And I think that lends a little bit more towards Kevin's background, right? And so I think he has less of a problem with it because of that. And the inverse is also true. Some of those qualifications, not that Sanders wouldn't be qualified for it, right? But I think he has major problems with it because of those. Personally, I'm going to be transparent. I have an issue with the bill, right?
Oh, shit. What
again, the issue I have is similar to what almost a lot of people say, which is putting in an appointed commission to decertify law enforcement. That in itself, for me, is not the issue. It's the creating an automatic vacancy because of that. That is the issue, right? I don't like, and Kevin kind of alluded to this too, that, it could be used in a really bad manner, right? We have a blue legislative now, but who knows, in 20 years, you could have a red legislative, and you don't want a legislative kind of using that bill to go after sheriffs they don't like. And there's other things to it. It's not just an appointed commission says, you're a sheriff, we don't like you, you're decertified. There's a whole process of complaint and investigation. But at the end of the day, there is a group of people who are not the voters, essentially saying you're decertified and you will be out of office in the next day. And then the county gets to appoint that replacement, right? And again, there is that special election later on, but I see that as an issue. There's a couple of things you could do, like a recall, that I think would be much better, right? Not exactly creating that vacancy. So I think there's some issues with that. What do you think?
Oh man, I think that's good. I'm really big on getting my mind to change about things. My mind isn't completely changed, but just you thinking about that, like other people coming into those positions and using it not for what it's meant to be, makes me think about it a little bit harder. And I'll tell you, I'm for it. So don't hate me in the comments. I'm for it. And I'll tell you this. I was against it. I was against it because I'm like, I got a lot of friends running for office right now. And I'm like, I can't imagine if, they work their butt off, right? They work their butt off to get in that position. And then after they work their butt off, somebody don't like them, or a group of people don't like them. And then they come together and they get rid of them. And I'm just like, I didn't agree with it. However, I've been watching, and I think you and I talked about this before. This changed my mind, and this is going on another subject.
Yeah, go ahead.
I sat there and watched some legislative hearings. I was just like, oh my God. This is changing changing my mind, because the things that were being said, and it wasn't just that one. It was, different people from all over the country, people in these sheriff positions. Me personally, I don't feel comfortable with having somebody that gets put into power and then they change who they are. Yeah. They get put into power, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, that shit that I ran on before. Forget that, because if you go back to some of those individuals when they were running for office, the speech changed. The speech changed. I'm not even going to give the person who I'm like thinking about. I'm not even going to like give them any space. Right now. Any space. But the speech changes. And to me, I feel like, okay, what do you do? What do you do when you get tricked like that? Like, what are you supposed to do? So I don't know. It's hard for me. But what you said makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I think I'm sticking to it. I like the bill.
And here's the thing. I think there's something that Derek said that I think was really interesting, which is he wants to make the recall process easier, right? And I agree with that. And on my public comments, someone has said to me, which really made me think about my position, was, well, what about the communities who are being targeted by sheriffs who are doing bad things or having hate speech? They don't have the luxury of waiting for the next election, something that kind of Derek alluded to, and they don't have the luxury of waiting 3 years for a better candidate that may not show up. So the question is, what do you do? Again, I don't have a great answer for that. I think that's very difficult, and that is why we have a legislative branch to figure this out. But that's where I would say making recalls easier is probably the middle of the road answer for things like that. But there are two sides of that, and both communities on this bill have very valid points, right? And so I applaud both candidates for being able to speak how they really feel about this bill, because it's not easy. You're going to alienate some people, and so I appreciate them coming out and saying exactly how they feel.
Yeah, and I thought that they were very authentic in what they were saying. There wasn't a time where I was just like, oh, no, man, that's some political BS. Right. I didn't really get that. Yeah, that's what I thought. What made it really cool. Did you hear any meaningful common ground that they both shared?
Yeah, I think their approaches to leadership philosophy is actually not that different, right? I think they both want to lead and be the face because they believe in reflective leadership. That's one thing I took from them, was both of them at multiple times in their careers, when they have criticisms, when they have critiques, when they're wrong, they reflect and they allow their deputies or their peers to reflect as well. And so that type of leadership, I think they both have. It's the day-to-day where they are different, right? And one thing Kevin said was he does want to be a little bit more in the administrative side than Derek currently is. I think that is a huge difference they have, right? Derek has said he wants to be out with the people. He doesn't like kind of that top-down micromanaging his deputies. So I think that's a huge difference. But the philosophy, I think, is very, very similar, right? And again, I want voters to know, again, they have a lot of similarities, right? It's not so crazy different. So I want you voters to think that, oh my God, it's A and Z, and there's no middle ground between them. It's not like that. They are both heavily qualified. They are both sincere in what they want and authentic, and I appreciate that. It's very difficult to do, and you don't find that a lot when it comes to law enforcement officers nowadays.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, there are some differences and there are some similarities, and all I could think about was me as a firefighter when I was in a firefighter, which chief, or in this case, which sheriff would I want to work with? And I kept taking away different things, like when it comes to Derek, I'm thinking, oh, so if I brought up, this and this, a couple years later, we go on calls together, we have that camaraderie, because there's a difference when you're working in emergency services. Those calls, you become best friends with people over the worst things. And I'm like, okay, that's a cool thing that Derek is out there doing that, and they're able to like do the high fives and stuff. I think that's pretty dope. And then you got the other side of it, to where Kevin is coming from, to where he's like, and he talked about this on the podcast, and y'all can check that out for the folks that's listening, leadersleadthepodcast.com. It'll be uploaded next week. But his whole thing is administrative, making sure different policies are updated, making sure that pay raises are getting where they're supposed to go, and just doing all the administrative stuff, which I can appreciate that too. It's almost like, damn, wouldn't it be cool if they could like work together? If there was like I don't know, like an assistant sheriff or something. I'll dope.
No, I know. I wish. It's funny. I was looking in the comments, and someone said Derek can be out day to day, and Kevin can do the administrative things of the sheriff office. Right? Right? Yeah, someone said that. Right? And I'm like, if only we could have that. Right? What one thing I think was very interesting, and there was another hot button issue, was accreditation for the sheriff office, right? And for Thurston County voters, again, we try to make this nonpartisan, non-biased. I went and tried to fact check this just a little bit, right?
Okay.
There's different sides, okay? Here's what I kind of figured out. They're both kind of right? One thing I wish either one of them would have done is explain that there's a difference between state accreditation and national accreditation. And that's where I think they were kind of both talking in different realms, right? So on state level, it is actually pretty affordable to get accredited, right? On the national level, it is highly, highly expensive, right? And you heard kind of a critique.
Are we talking about millions or thousands?
You're talking about millions.
Oh, okay.
Right? At least what I thought. Now I'm sure it scales differently depending on probably population and stuff like that, but it can get up into the millions, right? But there is some truth to what both of the candidates were saying. It is an ongoing maintenance. It is an ongoing maintenance, right? It's something that has to be done every couple of years. Up front, it can be heavy admin burden, but it also reduces liability costs and can save the county from heavy lawsuits. So again, I don't think there's any right and wrong, but you could tell this was an issue both of them very, very much disagree about. Right? And it's fine. Like, voters can decide whether that's a thing that they want or don't want from their sheriff. But I thought it was interesting how you can get into the details with these debates about what is really different between each candidate.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Rob Richards said 75% of the people polled about the sheriff bill supported it.
Understandable. Understandable.
Full disclosure. Rob Richards is campaign manager for Kevin Burton-Crow.
Right.
So I want to make sure.
Right. Here's what I would say to the 75% people polled, and Rob is an awesome campaign manager, right? So
100%.
100%, right? So I understand where he's coming from that. This is one of the things I particularly don't like about politics, and that is you can have a bill that has a lot of good things in it and have one or two things that is bad. And that is what kind of polarizes people, right? There are absolutely great things about this bill. Absolutely. And standardizing qualifications for the sheriff department, absolutely. Making sure the sheriff has to go through the same rigorous requirements as their deputies, absolutely. It's that one thing, it's that one vacancy thing that has me really know. And this is where we have to get more involved as a community with our legislators. And I think it's going to create, I think this is good stuff for Thurston County, right? You're right, Rob, facts are facts. I'm not saying you're wrong, right? I'm not saying you're wrong at all, right? I'm saying that in every bill, there is nuance, right? And the details matter in bills like this. So I can totally understand why a lot of people support it. I can understand why people don't. It really comes down to what they think is really good. I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding regarding credits. Again, absolutely there is, right? And I think that was one big thing. There's different levels to accreditation, and again, I personally don't really have an opinion on it. It's really never crossed my mind, right? And so I don't know what that means for a lot of people. It would matter, right? There is a certain amount of the Thurston County population who would absolutely trust the sheriff office more if they were accredited. That is not something to be dismissed, right?
That's interesting because I've never thought about it from the perspective of as a civilian. I honestly, I'll be honest, from working in the fire service, whenever they start talking about accreditation, I'm just like, oh man, I don't go through that. But thinking about it, it does sound cool to have a department that has the credentials. I mean, it kind of goes back. Well, no, because I was going to say it kind of goes back to the whole Cheyenne Bryant deal with.
Don't get me, yeah.
That's the same thing. Cheyenne Bryant, Dr. Cheyenne Bryant, not a doctor, but that's totally different because we're dealing with real officers that have accreditation. We're just talking about the organization's accreditation, which doesn't sound like they have to have it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's funny. I looked at Thurston County did a community health assessment in 2025 about how the community views Thurston County, right? And low crime and safe neighborhoods was number 4, right? Number 4, right? You had affordable housing, healthcare, and affordable groceries, and then low crime, right? So again, the sheriff office is a huge issue when it comes to Thurston County. And when I say issue, I don't mean bad. I mean, it is still top of mind for a lot of Thurston County residents, a lot of voters about how we make sure Thurston County is safe. And for some, accreditations would be helpful. For some, it doesn't matter. Go ahead, read some of these comments, Tony.
Derek Hollywood Sanders, I'll pass on them. I will say something about that part, the Hollywood part, and I'm not saying that I'm voting for Sanders. I'm not saying that at all, but I do think that the way that he goes about certain things, as far as communication and the things that he's uploading. Sometimes I look at it and I'm like, oh man, that is super cool that he's showing that. There have been some incidents where I was like, man, they really did a good job with that. And I'll be transparent. there's been some issues, some stuff where I said, man, I don't like this. I don't like this. And let me tell you, I said, I don't like this in the comment. No, it wasn't no shade against Derek. Cause like I said, I like him. I consider him a friend. Oh my God. They came at me. I was like, whoa, no. Oh man, should I delete it?
Man,
there's an army coming after me.
There is a huge debate between our neighbors on whether the sheriff office should be social media. I'm not even going to go there. Should use social media more than others, right? And for me, it comes down to one question. Do I know more about the Thurston County Sheriff office with the social media now than I did before? That's really what it comes down to for me.
Do you?
How I do, right? I do, right? And again, I'm not saying that they should continue to do it. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that there are good and bad things about his use in social media. For me personally, I think it outweighs the bad. Personally, I think he does need to learn. Some things are not for social media, right? Some things there is, and Kevin alluded to this too. There is a process that needs to take place, and I understand he may want the public to be aware of things in the county as soon as they need to be, but some things, again, it could be a couple things, but some things need to have a process. So I think he's learning that, and I think he's gotten better over the years. But that's a huge debate in social media right now.
Yeah, no, and I see it, and I want to ask you this. I want to ask you this. What about the organizations to where they've battened the hatches pretty much to where you don't know a doggone thing in what's going on with that organization? And when you're talking, I thought about this because I literally was texting a mayor of a city that I won't say, freaking actually yesterday, like getting pissed because I'm just like, okay, what's going on with this situation? And I was asking about ICE because people, they send me messages and I'm like, I don't know why you're sending me this. I don't know why you're sending me this. I'm not a police, right? I'm not a police, but and so I'm asking these questions, and it's like this wall, even with me, and I'm like, we're supposed to be friends, but when I start talking about certain stuff, it's like mum's the word. But when I get Derek on the podcast, he's telling me exactly. He said on the show, he told me as a sneak peek of the podcast, he told me that he actually updated the policies. When the thing with Renee Good happened. That made him change it. Okay. And then so I think about that, right? But then there's the flip side of the coin where with Kevin, where I feel like he would be more reserved. I think about, okay, what if I'm that person that's getting arrested?
Yeah.
I actually thought about that the other day.
Yeah.
I'm driving and I'm like, oh man, I hope it's not a cop. And if it is, dude, if it's like they pull me over, then I don't,
right.
I don't want that life. And not just me, people in general. So I think there's some good and some bad in it. I mean, I share stuff too much, and I feel like, for me being an entrepreneur, which is totally separate, I'm just saying like a regular dude, if I did not have social media, freaking, I wouldn't, my job, I would probably still be at work. Right. So it changed my life. It's a really cool communication tool. Have I shared stuff that my wife or my daughter or even my son have been like,
right.
Come on, Dad. Why would you do that? So I get it. I get it. I definitely get it. But I mean, I like being informed. So
for me,
because I'm nosy as hell, bro. So
me too. Right? Like, I think for me, when it comes to social media and communication, I learned this in the military when I was in. And I learned, and I do this now with being a program manager. Over communicating will rarely be an issue, right? So giving people more information than they may need is rarely ever an issue. The opposite is actually really, really bad, right? Not giving people, when you see these sheriff's offices buckle down and not give any information, that creates more issues in the community. So I do think the intention of Derek is in the right direction. I think it's the execution that he's got to get a little bit better on.
Yeah.
And reading some of these comments, there's one, Paulie, who said he worked with Burton in the Army as his colonel. Like, we would love for you to comment more, Paulie, because that's having that leadership perspective of him would be extremely helpful.
Oh, somebody just said that.
Yeah. Like that's something right there, right?
All right.
But you know what's interesting about the particular debate is I did want to say a couple of things. For Kevin specifically, one of the difficult things about running against an incumbent is that you have to articulate not only why you would be better, but why there's a need for change, right? And this is very, very difficult for anyone challenging an incumbent, right? This is where I think he's done some things really well on, and I think he could improve on, is during the debate, I kind of hoped he would articulate why he felt things need to change a little bit more, right? Like, at the end of the day, you're looking to replace the current sheriff, right? So it's upon you to convince people why, right? He's got to do that a little bit more. I do think that it is a concerted effort to not be as social media heavy in his campaign, to show the difference in how he would lead versus how Derek would lead. I'm curious to see how that comes through when it comes to the primary and the general election. But it's really interesting. I think you could sense a couple of themes with both of their campaigns. Kevin is very executive leadership, military experience. That is kind of the theme he's using for his campaign. And Derek's theme is, I'm already doing the job, right? And even his question to Kevin was, what would you change? What would you change? And I thought that was beautifully done when it comes to a debate of asking straight up, what would you change? It's really interesting how they prepared for this debate. And I think they both prepared really, really well. It's really interesting how they performed.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think I think they did a really good job, in my opinion, of kind of expressing who they are.
Mm-hmm.
Of who they are. Like when I've talked to them on the phone, text message, I didn't get like, I'm not being who I am. I didn't get that at all. Mm-hmm. I wish you guys had been able to cover the actual current
CJTC complaints.
What is that?
It's for the sheriff bill, right? The CJTC is the appointed commission that will review those complaints for elected leaders. I'm pretty sure I'm correct on that. Someone correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure that's what that is. And so there's a lot of public comment when it came to this bill. And I think that may be what they were thinking of, or maybe it's the comments
or maybe they're talking about internally inside of the sheriff department. That's what it sounded like.
Yeah, body language.
Rachel.
Right? Body language during the debate, you could tell was there was a little tension. I'm not gonna lie to you, there was a little bit of tension. But I think that is gonna be the case with any office where you're challenging the incumbent that you work with, right? There's always gonna be that tension because, again, they were both really, really respectful and professional. But at the end of the day, you're essentially saying you're not the right person for the job. I am. So there's going to be kind of that tension, right? And so, yeah, I think they could do a little bit better of kind of showing and hiding some of their body language. Like I said earlier, like 50% is nonverbal, and when it comes to debates, and I think Derek, he had a couple of eye rolls in there. I caught on that he had a couple of eye rolls in there. And so I think he's got to work on that as well. But there's going to be that tension. It's always going to be there when politics is politics.
What do you think about Kevin's body language?
Okay. Kevin seemed a little uncomfortable with his body language, right? I think he was comfortable because the way he answered was pretty good, right? But his demeanor when he wasn't talking seemed a little bit uncomfortable. I think Derek, and this isn't like a bad term, but is a mouthpiece. There's just certain people who get more lively when they talk. And I think that's Derek. So when he answers and when he's sitting there listening, that comes through. I think Kevin is the exact opposite, right? Mm-hmm. He's very much more reserved. And I think that has some benefits. But I think in a debate, when you're live, it can come off as being a little timid. And again, kind of going back to you challenging an incumbent, you have to show that like, this guy is not the right person for the job. I'm the right person. And so being a little timid may affect him a little bit, but I think generally he did a really good job.
Yeah. No, I think they both did a good job in communication. Let's see. We are living in a social media age. That is why you are on here right now. Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. And that's the reason why we did this debate on social media. And I'll be completely honest with you. I had this idea one day and I'm just like, oh man, it'll be cool to see like all of these people that are running for office do a debate. And I'm just like, yeah, that would be really cool. So I started reaching out to people. And they're like, dummy. And literally, dummy. We already do that. And I'm like, what? Really? I've been living here since like 2009. I didn't realize that we did. And then I started doing some research and a couple doors got closed on me. And then we started doing, a couple doors got closed on me. And I was just like, oh shit, let's just do it ourselves. Because one thing that I noticed was there was a gap was they have these debates and you don't see them like co-promoted.
Right. Yeah.
By the people. So you never know. You never know. And that was part of this was let's do a debate and not just me co-promote it, but I need like everybody to do it. Right. Yeah, yeah. And so we did that. And I really believe that if I'm checking for a candidate, I'm not going to be looking at some of the traditional freaking commercial deals. I'm right here on my phone. Oh, what's going on? And what's going on with the county commissioners? What's going on with the county sheriffs? I'm on my phone. So that was kind of the thought process in it, and to try to get people to go out and do that thing in the physical, not so much on social media, but go and actually vote. Candace, I think, brought up we should do one for the county commissioner race. And actually that is that's in the works. What we're going to do is we are going to wait until after the primaries so that we can have that, so that it could be 2 people instead of 3 people. Yeah. And I'll be honest, even the logistics of all of that was kind of we didn't go live on it didn't go live on Facebook. It ended up being on YouTube, and everybody's showing up. And so I think it'd be better with 2, and then you can actually maybe hopefully make a decision. And for the folks that are listening, I really would love for y'all to fill that out, and that'll, and I know there's going to be some things you're like, oh, you could have did this, or you should have did this. Please put that stuff there so that so that this can get better. I would love to continue doing this. I would do this for as long as my wife will let me do it. Like Vonnie would be down to do it too.
Absolutely.
And definitely, no bias. Everything is about the debate. And what else do you got? What else you got before we close up, man?
The thing you said about social media and people, organizations saying, we already do social media. I think,
but do they?
But do they, right? There's a transition. There's a broad umbrella of social media, and usually people say we're going to put a video out on. What they mean is we're going to put a video out on YouTube, never promote it, and have 50 people watch it, right? What you're doing completely different, right? And that is what people are really wanting, because I'm the same way. Like, I'm not going to traditional media to figure out candidates. The first thing I do when I see a candidate runs is I look at your website, and I'm expecting you to tell me what I need to know to figure it out. I want to see, are you doing videos? Are you going on podcasts? Are you reaching out and getting into those spaces where people are getting their information, which is right on their phone? Are you on TikTok? Are you on Facebook? Are you on Instagram? Right? Like, YouTube is like one of the first social medias, right? So it's valuable, and especially for long content like this. But there's a couple candidates out there running now who do social media beautifully, like masters at it. And it has nothing to do really with age, although you may see some similarities with that. They are able to expand their reach because they do social media so well. Very similar to how you do it, right? You're everywhere. Your podcast, YouTube, the Facebook. That is how you're supposed to do social media. And candidates need to take heed of that. Of when you run a campaign and you're trying to get into elected office or just reach a neighbor, traditionally how we've always done it, it may not always be the best way to do it now.
Yeah, no,
Right.
I agree. I 100% agree with you. And I think that, and I always look at the whole, when I do some calls with candidates and they're like, I would rather, doorbell, my signs, and, send out mailers. I think all of that stuff is cool. And I definitely don't think that it should replace it. Some should definitely be replaced.
Yeah.
But man, we did an experiment, and Facebook hasn't typically been like my grind for work, and for the podcast has been LinkedIn. But the last 28 days, and this is for candidates that are watching this, because I do see some candidates in the comments. Your folks will beat the hell out of you on social media. If all you're going to do, the people that you're running against, if all you're going to do is hand out yard signs, take pictures of yourself at certain events with like 30 and 40 people, they're going to beat the hell out of you. And just remember Blockbuster. That's all I got to say. Remember Blockbuster. They refused. They said, oh, we don't want this new technology. We're not going to do it. They blew it. They freaking blew it. Nobody cares about Blockbuster anymore. It's a freaking novelty for a reason. But I mean, the last 28 days, we're promoting this event. We were able to go to 50,000 reel views just on the reels that we put out just to promote this event. Not 50, I mean 500,000. Sorry, half a million.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
So think about that. Like, how many doors are you going to go and knock? So that's my thinking. And I think about, for the folks that don't believe me, look at Melissa Chaudhry. Melissa Chaudhry. Oh my God. Pumping. I mean, I'm not saying you got to do this, but there was one day I saw every 30 minutes and you see people in the comments, I'm donating. I am donating right now. Just pledge $200 to your campaign. That's on social media. That's one of the biggest things that I hear candidates and campaign managers. One of the biggest things that I hear them complain about is getting the support when it comes to the donations. So take heed to that for the folks that are watching this. And if you're a candidate, I think it's powerful.
It is.
Social media masters. Which candidates do you think are? Do we think are what? Oh,
social media masters. I think it's her next comment.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I don't want to make it seem like I can't vote for these people anyway, right? But Hannah running for the Senate in the 43rd does social media one of the best in the last couple of years. Again, figure out how, if you're in the 43rd, who you want to vote for. That's your business. But I think her social media, and if you look, I probably shouldn't say this, but if you look, her opponent even kind of copies some of the themes from her social media. I'm not saying like it's
I
bad,
would too.
right? But go look at some of the dates that Hannah has some videos, and you'll see just a couple. Well, like a day or two later, her opponent does a very similar. Like I think I'll give you one example. One was like Hannah was cooking, or she's in her kitchen or something, and cooking and doing something for her campaign. And then like a couple days later, her opponent put in a video of cooking in the kitchen. I'm like, that's oddly similar, right? Like, that's oddly similar. I'm not saying it's bad, right? And again, you figure out who you want to vote for in that race if you want to, right? But there are candidates like her who I think do social media really, really well. And again, I don't think it's an age thing. Anybody can learn social media, but it needs to be top of mind for candidates in the 21st century, right? Like, Tony, I say this all the time. We need leaders who are focused on the next 30 years and not the last 30 years, right? And so, again, I think social media is, especially with AI and advancements like that, it's going to come up more and more. And so candidates can either get on it and learn how to use it effectively to get their message out, or kind of be left in the dust, right? Don't be Blockbuster.
I love it. I love it. What else? The folks in the audience, what else did y'all notice during the debate? I'm curious. Was there something I didn't ask you already that you were thinking about when it comes to the debate?
I'll say this. I have a couple of things, right? I think I saw one instance where I think Derek got a little defensive, right? And that was when we talked about flock cameras, right? They both had really good answers, and someone said it in the comments that the sheriff office requested to buy like 22 flock cameras in 2024, right? So I do think that slightly, I think he kind of masked it kind of well, but I think it got under his skin a little bit because I think, as I said, his reflective leadership kind of sees that was kind of a bad way to go. And I think that was interesting. I hope that he does some more reflection. And I said, he had a great answer, and they both did great answers on flock the company versus the actual technology. I think a lot of people didn't understand that distinction, and I think they clarified that really, really well. Mm-hmm. Right? Oh man, there was a lot of things that I saw. I think talking about the budget, especially when Kevin brought it up about the budget, and it's kind of a funny time when they talked about the signage and lighting it up at night, right? Mm-hmm. I thought it was kind of funny, right? Because it shows you it's kind of these little things that can be at the top of people's minds, right? Now, again, whether you think the sign should be lit up at night or not, that's up to you. But I do think that Kevin is doing a really good job looking at the details. And he said he was detail-oriented, looking at the details that he wants to separate between him and Derek the incumbent.
Yeah. No. I see that. There are some, it's almost like, which type of leader do you want?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what I think that they did really good tonight with articulating that. What type of leader do you want? And I don't necessarily see one good or bad. Me personally, I would love to work with both of them.
Yeah.
Because they both have their strengths. And I think that, and somebody said in the comments that, which I liked because I love the balance of things. Somebody said, well, they're saying a lot of things that are the same.
Yeah.
If you break it down, they're saying a lot of things that are the same. And I'll tell you, when I listened to their podcast episode, there was some stuff where I was just like, damn, he literally said the same thing that Derek said. Derek literally said the same thing that Kevin said. So I think at the end of the day, I think no matter who gets picked, I feel like we're in good hands. And that's what I think. You got some comments coming in.
And I think that is the best thing to take away from this, not only the debate, but this race. Thurston County is going to be well served regardless of who wins, right? You can walk away knowing we're good. Whoever is leading our county sheriffs and our county deputies is going to have great leadership. It really just depends on what kind of leadership you want, but they're both, again, highly qualified, highly educated. It's really just your preference of what kind of sheriff you really want. That's what it comes down to.
Awesome. What else you got for me? Any final words?
Final words. Listen, people of Thurston County, our neighbors, okay? At the end of the day, Derek, Kevin, love this community. And again, like I said, are going to be well served. And I hope that this debate allows us as a community to be more politically engaged, because there are people making decisions for my family, for your family, for our neighbors' families. And these decisions matter, whether it's at the sheriff's office, whether it's county commission, city council, state legislator, whatever it is. I hope this allows people to just get 1% more involved in looking at these candidates and asking the tough questions for candidates and getting your answers that you want and getting them heard. It is our job as voters to make sure that our elected leaders are actually representing us. And that, I think, is the great thing about debates like this and platforms like this. It holds our elected leaders and people wanting to be elected leaders accountable. And I'm all for accountability. I love it. Right? I can't get enough of it. I really can't. I appreciate you having me on here. This was a lot of fun. Again, the debate was awesome, Tony. I mean, couldn't have went better. It was awesome. You did a really great job. Again, I hope this sparks more debates like this. For those watching, this is Tony's thing. This is Tony's thing. Right, let's do this. Let's do more of this. Absolutely. And I think, again, for any candidates watching now and in the future, reach out, try to get on a platform like this, do a debate. It is all for the betterment of our neighbors in Thurston County and anyone watching this on YouTube across the state, across the country. Be more involved in politics.
Awesome. I love that. And yeah, I appreciate everybody that's still rocking with us. Look like we got 97 folks. I think that's pretty good considering we didn't go live on the primary platform. I'm a little disappointed in that. And if you can, maybe do a post for me like that. I'm going to restream it. Yeah, not just you, but the folks that are watching it. I would really appreciate it. And I appreciate everybody that helped out. I appreciate you, Vonnie, for being willing to do this, because I'm gonna tell you, I'm just a citizen, man. When it comes to this politics stuff, I'm only interested. I got interested because there's some things that I was saying that I wasn't liking locally, and that's why I started doing this. But I appreciate you being willing to come on the platform and speak so eloquently about these situations, because I mean, open my mind up to some things. And I appreciate Ashley for being willing to be the timekeeper. Oh my God, Ashley Brooks, you are freaking amazing. She did that without a hitch. And Henry, that's in the back, I appreciate you, Henry Yang. He is our podcast editor. If you listen to Leaders Lead the Podcast, he is the person behind the magic of it. And he also is taking some clients right now. So if you got a podcast, hit us up. Henry will hook you up. And he is really good. He's probably one of the most thoroughest producers that I've ever worked with, ever. So I think, yeah, no save rounds, no alibis. I think we good. I think we good. And let's see. Oh, that's my wife.
She's the hero. She's the hero.
Dude, she had to listen to me freaking not complain this whole week, but like, oh, I got homework. I got to do this. I got to reach out to this person, or freaking, I hope Vonnie says yes. I hope Henry says yes. Oh, freaking Ashley reached out. Thank you for saying, yeah, she had to listen to all of that.
All of that, yeah.
So no, I definitely appreciate it. Tell your wife I appreciate her for lending
Of
us
course, absolutely.
for the hour.
Yeah.
And everybody that's watching, thank y'all again. 87 people still here watching us now as we fade. But it would be really cool to fill out that. Fill out the form. You fill out the form, it'll actually take you to the podcast. We got some really cool people that we are interviewing. Kevin episode is going to drop next week. Derek's episode is going to drop next week. We got an episode with Marilyn Strickland coming up. We got an episode with who else we got? Michelle Gibson running for county commissioner. Her episode is coming up. We got an episode with Emily Klaus that's running for her seat, county commissioner. That's a previous episode, so you can check that out. Nick Dunnan. I want Nick Dunnan, who's running for county commissioner, to come on the show. I think that would be freaking incredible. They're in a three-way race that I think is really cool. So subscribe to the podcast, and we will make sure that you're notified. And Vonnie, if you could stick around for a second.
Of course.
Yeah. So thank you, and thank everybody for checking us out. Whew, that was great. If you enjoyed this podcast, well, I'm sure you enjoyed it. If you're still here with us, what I want you to do is head over to your favorite podcast and streaming network and give us a download. Subscribe to the channel, and also let us know what you think about the show. And from the bottom of my heart, I want to say thank you for the things that you've done. Thank you for the things that you're doing. And especially thank you for the things that you're going to do, because I know that you're going to do something amazing.